Side cartoon is it's a guy in
Okay.
the auditorium with a giant banner behind him, and then it says, "Welcome,
Okay.
adult children."
Welcome, everyone.
This one
It's
guy.
7:04 PM, and I'm calling the November 4th, 2025 Hamilton Planning Board meeting to order. This meeting is being recorded by HW Cam, and so I'm going to start by taking roll. So when I call your name, would you please indicate that you're present? Pat Norton,
Present.
Jonathan Poor,
Jonathan Poor, present.
Bill Wheaton,
Bill Wheaton, present.
Emil Dahlquist,
Emil Dahlquist, present.
Darcy Dale,
Darcy Dale, present.
Beth Herr,
Present.
Matt Hamill,
Present.
Marnie Crouch, present. I note for the record, our associate member, Jeff Austin, is not present. So our first order of business is to approve minutes from September 24th, October 7th, and October 14th. Yes,
Marnie, I found a typo on October 7th.
okay.
It's on page 2, third paragraph, first sentence, second line. Swap out whoever with the word whomever. And that's it. That's all I found.
I didn't quite catch that, but you know what? If you have the minutes in front of you, would you just give them to Mark and he can make that correction?
Okay.
Are there any other,
that right
any
now.
other discussion about the minutes? I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes from September 24th, October 7th, and October 14th.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor of approving the minutes as noted?
Aye.
Aye.
It's unanimous. All members approve the minutes. So now we can turn to the continued hearing, the continued public hearing on the Browns Hill Overlay District. And just to inform everyone, if they're not aware of this already, last night the Select Board did approve the development agreement that is that is to be considered in conjunction with the overlay district. To quote John Witten, it's a belt and suspenders type of situation here. So we now have what's captioned memorandum agreement between the town of Hamilton and Gordon Conwell Theological Seminary. I note that the hyphen between Gordon and Conwell is missing. I will point that out to the select. So the development agreement did take a long time to prepare, but it does have provisions that I think are favorable to the town, and conversely, I think there's some that are favorable to the seminary. So I think overall, it's a document that the town can be proud of, and the seminary should feel the same. So what I personally appreciate is that there will be a restriction on the heritage landscape, and I'm not going to read that provision. It's a little qualified, but it will, for at least for 30 years. That's that'll be after I'm gone. Unless I live into the hundreds, which I don't think is going to happen. No, I don't think so. So that's very beneficial. So I think that I personally am interested in seeing the Retreat House, Pilgrim Hall, and the Gatehouse, which are associated with the Mandel family, preserved because of that family's significance to the town. I don't know that much about that family, but the Mandels did either contribute or all or most of the funds for the community center, and that was to honor their son who was killed in World War I, as well as other soldiers from Hamilton that were killed in World War I. So I'm hoping that the planning board can see that those buildings are recognized by the historical commission for their significance. They would not perhaps be eligible for the National Register of Historic Places, but they certainly have significance to the town of Hamilton. And I know from speaking to Attorney Walters that the seminary has rehabilitated the interior of the retreat house and brought it up to its perhaps original grandeur. I haven't seen the inside of it, but it's reported that it's very well done. So with that bit of an introduction, we can turn to consideration of the Browns Hill Overlay District. I want to point out to members of the Select Board, we did receive just 3 comments from the seminary with respect to the draft that you have in front of you. And I wanted to also point out some license that I took in adding to the purposes of the overlay district. And so in the purposes, you may note that we referenced I apologize. I'm going to go to my revision 2. We did reference the town's general bylaw, Chapter 31. Because of the age of these buildings, they would be subject to the demolition provision of that bylaw. But the seminary requested that we add language with respect to private ways and driveways in the Browns Hill Overlay District. And I thought that request was reasonable. You all have it. If anybody has a different opinion, I would hope that they raise that now. But it essentially permits the use of the interior roadways by occupants of the site. Is there any discussion or any problems with that?
No.
So we will go ahead and include that language. Oh, yes, okay. And then the seminary also requested additional language in section 9.9.3.1 that appears on page 3 of the bylaw. And I modified the language they suggested. I will read it for you. It says, further, a lot comprising all the land within the lower campus denominated LC1, comprising existing apartments known as A, B, C, and D, and a lot comprising all the land within the lower campus denominated LC2, comprising existing apartments known as E and F, and I have in paren, see Table 1, and LC1 and LC2 as depicted in the Hamilton zoning map as revised, hopefully on December 9th, 2025, shall be deemed to be lawfully conforming to the Hamilton zoning bylaw upon the effective date of the BHOD. And the only other requested change to the language appears on page 12 in paragraph 10 of section 9.9.6.2. It's just a phrase with reference to the 200 square feet per unit for amenities and communal activities for residents of the multifamily development, which may be located on the lot or on another lot with deeded easement rights and other enforceable rights. And I did not think that that was a substantive change to the bylaw. Does anyone here on the planning board disagree? Just backing up a little bit, I talked about the Mandel House, but in the general purposes, I did mention that the 2005 Hamilton Reconnaissance Report, which was prepared by the Massachusetts Department of Conservation and Recreation as part of the Essex County Inventory for Heritage Landscape Inventory Program. So I thought that background was important for the town to understand some of the thought processes that go into this overlay district as well as the table of uses. So is there any further discussion about the actual text of the overlay district?
Last night it came up at the select board that
Yes,
we were
that's
going to be changing the wording
Back
from
and
the
forth.
overlay, since it's not going to be an overlay district.
Well, that's subject to some, my recollection is, and I think John Witten changed his mind, that at one point he said use of the term overlay was acceptable. I looked into this, Mark looked into this, and I actually found some commentary that suggested that you could use the word overlay even though the underlying zoning was removed. So I haven't received any written legal decision that says it's absolutely prohibited to use the word overlay district in this context. And so, right in our bylaws, we have the groundwater protection overlay district, and that basically supersedes the underlying zoning. So I'm not sure that the issue is that critical. If town council or anyone else wants to present to the planning board a decision citing Massachusetts law, which I could find nothing in Massachusetts law that permitted this term, that prohibited this terminology, or cases, I'd be happy to change the
Right.
language. But my thinking at this point is we have used this terminology, brownfield
I know it's
overlay
it's
district.
everywhere.
It's everywhere, it's in the newspaper, it's been used for 2 or 3 years, and my sense is, yes, we can change it. Is there some advantage to changing it? That's the question I have. So I invite anyone who disagrees with that analysis to
Just for
provide
clarification,
me
yeah.
with chapter and verse in Mass General Law and some case law that says we can't do this, and I'll be
I think it just
happy
came
to
up
change it.
because there was no underlying district, so really we're changing the zoning. So I think it's just to explain it to like the public why that change came up in conversation last
Yeah.
night.
Yeah.
And my sense was, and I might have not been reading the room right, but my sense was that the select board was feeling like we were moving ahead with changing it.
Well, if that was the case, I received no written comment.
Okay, that's fine. I mean, I could have
Whatsoever
totally missed that,
from
but
the
maybe
se-
other people felt
From
different.
the select board or anyone else. Did
Okay.
you, Mark?
No,
Oh.
it has come up in legal comments and
Okay,
things like
so
that.
I mean, it just might have been a miscommunication between the boards. I was just there, so I'm just communicating what they said and maybe their thought that we were changing it. So,
Yeah. I will say that from the first draft all the way to this draft, it's been very clear that this replaces the underlying zoning.
Right,
So
right.
it's, in my view, sort of semantics, whether.
that was the first time I had heard of it, so I just wanted to bring it up and make sure that we're communicating.
And you can corroborate my review of the law. I mean, I just saw nothing that prohibited this, and so, let's put it this way.
Okay, that's fine.
If it becomes the BHCD, I don't think the meaning will not change. So perhaps we can now turn to the tables. And I think that we may have to tweak, and I shouldn't say that. I'm going to let Emil speak to square footages, because we relied on the Abramson and Associates report with respect to some of the square footages, whether they're actually, we might be off by, a couple hundred square feet here or there. I think it's with respect to the lots, LC1 and LC2. The sizes of them might be a little, there might be a very minor discrepancy, but that should not deter us at all. So I want to also add, and I'm sorry, I apologize, I should have said this sooner, the draft and the tables that you have in front of us reflect the input that we received from town council. So there have been some non-substantive modifications to the tables. So perhaps we could turn to Table 1. And Town Council did have, she questioned the necessity of Table 1. And in discussions, and as you know, Emil and I and Mark have been, communicating with Town Council. We thought that this summary was very helpful to have, and we addressed Town Council's issues by the addition of a footnote that essentially says in the event of any inconsistency as to the description of uses or what is permissible by right or by special permit, that Table 2 controls. So I think that unless there's discussion about Table 1, it seems to be in pretty good shape. Any comments?
Would it help at all change the title of it so that it's characterizes it more as a summary rather than a table?
Well, we did put in the right-hand column, summary of development and permitting requirements.
Yeah, so both the subheadings characterize it as a summary. It's just that the table 1 BHOD subdistricts doesn't really characterize it that way. It's a minor suggestion, but as long as council is fine with it, I'm
Yeah,
fine
I
with it.
think that by saying that Table 2 controls were
Yep.
covered. And turning to Table 2, so just in summary, and Emil and Mark, correct me if I'm wrong, that this campus is limited to residential development, and residential, commercial development in the sense that there could be a long-term care facility. So a long-term care facility is essentially a residential facility for, if not elderly, incapacitated people in one form or another. But it's not, although it might be a business in the sense that the residents pay to live there, it's still a residential, in substance, a residential use. So there's commercial, limited commercial uses permitted in the Retreat House, Pilgrim Hall, and the Gatehouse by right. And then there are accessory uses that could be in one of the residential facilities or complexes, but they're, as the name implies, accessory to the residential use. And so the one addition to Table 2 is footnote 6, where there's a definition of small scale, and I wanted to have a discussion about this. So I think Mark had mentioned, some limiting factors. So we chose a floor area of less than 2,000 square feet. Which is not large, but if you, for example, wanted to have a daycare center or a gym, it can't be so small as that it would be non-functional.
Right.
I think that makes sense.
Madam Chair,
Yes?
there was some discussion in the last couple of meetings about repurposing the larger buildings in the upper campus. And I, for one, was in favor of repurposing being subject to special permit use. the smaller buildings, I don't see any problem with, but I'm a little bit worried that if we make repurposing the upper campus buildings without any review process, the town is allowing types of professional commercial uses that could be quite detrimental to the neighborhood and the town.
There are no commercial uses except in what is now defined in capital letters as the legacy buildings. So there,
I'm looking at table 2 here.
right. So if you look, it's all special permit, except for commercial use in the legacy buildings. It's all special permit.
Oh, I
So,
see, you're referring to footnote 3 there.
right. But so, the object here is to preserve those legacy buildings, not to have them torn down. And so, the thinking was that they would be suitable for some commercial use. Now, the seminary has just rehabilitated the retreat house for its use, and it's my understanding they intend to stay on the campus for quite some time. So I don't think that, at least in the foreseeable future, barring some unforeseen circumstance, that the retreat house would be subject to any commercial use. So we're really talking about Pilgrim Hall and the gatehouse, but the gatehouse is so small that if there were to be any commercial use there, I would suspect it would be more like a law office or an accounting office, some kind of professional office that would be unlikely to generate a lot of traffic. It's just not large enough to accommodate that. So that leaves essentially Pilgrim Hall as the only only building that's likely to have commercial use. And hopefully those uses would serve the residents of the apartments and any other, if the campus were ultimately developed for multifamily or some other type of townhouses or senior housing, which I think is an ideal use for the campus, then Pilgrim Hall would be,
Could I ask that we change the wording on that to other commercial uses in the legacy buildings are limited to the types of commercial uses identified as accessory uses to residential.
just
I think-
add the word accessory
Uses to residential. To any residential use.
Another
Well,
question.
not for the
Accessory
legacy.
uses,
The legacy buildings are not going to be accessory uses. They can be commercial in and of it themselves. But if there is
by
commercial,
right.
right, but if there were to be a commercial use in Pilgrim Hall, it could only be the types of uses that are listed as accessory uses. So in Pilgrim Hall, you could have small-scale retail, cafe, restaurant, daycare, fitness center.
I understand it. I'm more concerned about the larger scale buildings, the chapel, the library, all the educational buildings on the top, in the upper campus. It seems that we are allowing any use of those buildings by right.
No,
What's
not
confusing, if I can just interject for a moment, I
legacy.
think what's confusing is the way the table's framed here. It doesn't define legacy buildings on the table. You have to go back to purposes to figure out what the legacy buildings are. And then it's a little confusing when you see the P under upper campus, because there are no legacy buildings on the upper campus.
there is a legacy building on the upper campus, the Gatehouse.
You're right. I stand corrected.
So all of the-
So here's a suggestion. Here's a suggestion. What might be useful, because a developer would have that same confusion. You'd have to go back to purposes to understand it. It might be useful to sort of redefine quickly legacy buildings so that the footnotes make sense here, and you don't have to hunt back in purposes to understand. We understand it, but somebody...
I completely agree with Jonathan. If I'm, without any specification, legacy building would seem to refer to any
So all the
structure.
content is there, it's just clarifying.
Okay.
It's not a change of
Any
content, it's
structure.
just
If
clarifying.
If you go back to Table 1, which is an introduction, the purpose of that is to introduce the sub-districts by name. The second thing is descriptions where legacy buildings are specified in there, what they are. Doesn't mean all of the buildings on the site, it just means you have it down to 3 buildings. So it's in the descriptions. And then the summary building is the summary of the development permitting requirements. I mean, the only thing I would say, if one possible thing, you could say existing business office, professional office, and other commercial, which would be only one well, that group of buildings on the top, on the upper campus. You could say existing buildings, but I think we took that word out for some reason. But the idea was that those buildings could stay, provided they get repurposed to one of the uses in the table. That was the idea, so I can see the need for clarification.
Yeah.
Can we just add a number 7 on the footnote?
I think it's just helpful for this table to stand on its own and not have to refer to Table 1 or the purposes in
Yeah.
those. And again, it's not changing content, it's just changing navigation.
The idea was to, to leave those buildings if they can be repurposed.
Sure.
And that was the idea.
No
And So we
question.
had to identify it for what it is.
Yeah.
And then say, and then make it clear at that point that the building would have to be raised if they couldn't find a use for those buildings that conform to the Table 2.
I'm just trying to address
Yeah.
Bill's confusion
Yeah.
about the larger institutional buildings on the top of the campus, that's all.
Could I-
We'll take care of that.
Can I just tell you,
Excuse me, we are not open to public comment yet. I apologize, I know you want to speak, but the board...
no, it's just for clarification on this chart, because I can tell you what's confusing about it, but I'll wait until later.
I think our board members just told us what was confusing about it,
Yeah.
and I see it now. So,
No.
I mean, I continue to be a little bit confused.
no, I see...
In the way
what-
the table is organized, so footnote 3 uses the term accessory uses, and does that refer to the lists below under accessory uses, daycare, fitness,
Yes.
neighborhood, and community?
Yes.
Then maybe you should say accessory uses as defined below, so that it's
Right.
clear that those are the only accessory uses that are allowed by right. I just,
I got it, Bill.
you understand
I do.
my point of confusion?
And I also understand the commercial. And the problem is, we have business, professional, office, other commercial. That is limited to the legacy buildings, and that should be clear, and
You
it's
could,
not.
you could literally add those words to this column, there's enough room for it,
Right, right.
and then that would clear,
Commercial legacy buildings.
and that would clear it up, so that you don't have to refer back to another table or page.
Well, actually, it's, the other commercial is the long-term care facility.
Right, but that's not the Bill's confusion right now.
Right, but, so we really need to flip legacy building, business, professional, office, other commercial as the first row, and then legacy building expansion as the second row, and then the third row is long-term care facility.
Correct.
And we will then add Bill's suggestion, define below, and then with respect to legacy buildings, I can just, just put C 9
Yeah, I think that would really clear up the navigation through it.
Yep.
Right, 9.9.1.1 and Table 1. And that should clear it up. So, and to be clear, for commercial, it's the legacy buildings only are permitted by right. and the long-term care facility is a special permit. So there are commercial uses by right in 3 buildings, and accessory uses to the residential uses in all buildings, but they are all by special permit, except by state law, daycare centers for children cannot be the subject of a special permit. They're essentially like the Dover Amendment. If you want a daycare center, you get to have a
Fascinating.
daycare center. Would be subject to site plan review. But that would seem to be an ideal use for Pilgrim Hall, and there was a daycare center in there. And if you
And there
have-
was a nursery school, yeah.
yeah, if you have 209 apartments, I think you have a built-in group of kids that might need a daycare center, particularly because, and Merwin, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but the vast majority of the apartments are either 1 bedroom or 2 bedrooms, right?
Studio in one.
Yeah, so, yeah, there will be children there, but they'll be small children. I don't envision, large families with teenagers and 2-bedroom units, so. With those clarifications, is there any further discussion?
Legacy buildings are just 3.
So, Bill, just to be clear, commercial uses in the Retreat House, Pilgrim Hall, and the Gatehouse, full stop. If there's any intent to expand the Retreat House or Pilgrim Hall, that is special permit. And there can be accessory uses, for example, in a long-term care facility or in a townhouse complex. I mean, you often see some amenities that might include a little cafe or something along those lines, but the accessory uses are limited, and they are, except for the childcare, all by special permit.
Got it.
I mean, part of this is the ordering of the tables. So Table 3 clearly makes it a definition of what legacy buildings are. But that comes after Tables 1 and 2, which define all the things you can do with legacy buildings. And you sort of think that we should define those buildings first and then
Well,
describe
they're-
what
They're
you can do.
defined in purposes, and
They're
they're also,
defined in the very first
Okay,
paragraph.
okay.
But I have now added a reference, see Section 9.9.1.1 in Table 1. So that should,
Well, and do you want to add and Table 3? Because Table 3, I think,
I
is
did,
the, oh, you said
Table,
1.
Table 1 and 3.
Yeah, because 3, I think, is the clearest
Okay,
definition.
all right. But it is right in.
Right, yeah.
The first paragraph. Okay. Any further discussion on that? And then moving on to Table 3.
I might have a comment on everyone's favorite topic, the wastewater treatment plant.
Oh,
I just read the development.
Table 3?
Oh, we're in table 3, yeah?
Yeah, okay, yep.
Yep, building types.
Yep.
We described the wastewater treatment facility, reads wastewater treatment facility for our structures occurs at the facility of the middle campus, at either a facility at the middle campus along Woodbury Street or a limited septic field along Essex Street adjacent to the multifamily housing. The development agreement reads that, and I don't know if I'm taking it just too literally or not, but it says, all the developments, doesn't matter where it happens on the campus, shall be treated by means of an on-site wastewater treatment plant by a wastewater treatment. Like, it leads me to believe that any development on the campus has to be treated by the wastewater treatment plant.
does it say A
It
or
sounds,
the?
it says A,
But that could be multiples. The
On-site.
The would be singular.
the would be singular.
A is multiples.
So I guess is the intent of the development agreement to say that it just has to be treated on site, doesn't matter where?
We can't predict everything.
Well, I understand, I just want to make sure that we don't have defined something in conflict to a development agreement, and that also the language in the bylaw ties back, or the overlay district, sorry, ties back to the table
Okay,
too.
let me, where are you talking about in the development agreement? What paragraph?
Suggestion from Merrill,
It's section I,
but I don't know whether that's,
and just maybe for my own
Whether we've
clarification, what the
gotten there yet.
purpose was behind the statement. And,
Wait a second. Development agreement, what page?
oh geez, 4? I'm reading on my phone.
Oh, here we go. Required connection to on-site wastewater treatment plant.
By means of an on-site wastewater, by means of an on-site wastewater treatment plant.
I don't
Still
think
multiples.
I think the intention
Any of
here
many.
is that it's on-site, full stop. I don't think we're trying
Okay.
to define what
Okay.
can
And
happen.
I'm limiting it to one,
That language doesn't limit it to one.
okay, thank you.
Okay.
Marnie, I had another question on 9.9.3.1.
9.9,
3.1, structures lawfully in existence at the effective date.
hold on, wait a minute, 9.9.3.1. So,
What does it mean to be lawfully conforming to the Hamilton zoning bylaw? There are buildings in existence in the upper campus which don't meet the legacy definition, which use would be, for purely commercial use, would be allowed only with special permit, I think. But this line says that all these buildings will be deemed lawfully conforming to the Hamilton zoning bylaw.
as of the effective date of the bylaw, not before, only, they will be deemed conforming when and if this overlay district is adopted.
I understand that. So what does it mean for a structure to be conforming? Is there a difference between a structure and its use? I guess that's my problem here.
Well, if you look at Section 5 of our zoning bylaw, you need, it talks about variances, and there can be a variance with respect to use and a variance with respect to structures. So when the law
What
was...
this means is they don't need a variance with respect to structure.
Right. We couldn't give one anyway, but essentially if, for example, the seminary were to come in and, Harbor Light came in and wanted a variance with respect to the apartments when they were going to combine A and B with a central unit. And the Zoning Board of Appeals said we could, the use wasn't the issue, it was the structure. So we're saying here that the structures will be deemed conforming to the zoning bylaw if and only if this overlay district is adopted. So we're not trying to, if, for example, this.
No, I understand it. I totally understand it. And the purpose of this is to make sure that the buildings, could be sold at some date and they wouldn't be contrary to the zoning bylaw. They would be allowed to exist in some sense. I'm
This is
just
just
worried
the
that this,
structures, not uses.
I'm just worried that this, it doesn't deal with use.
Because the uses are all going to be determined through Table 2. Because without this zoning bylaw, the only use that could be had on this site,
Okay.
single-family houses.
Or long-term care.
No, no.
Long-term care.
Without the bylaw,
Oh, without the bylaw, yeah.
without the bylaw.
Right, right.
Right, that's the underlying.
I mean, if the seminary were to sell this property without this bylaw, you basically would
Right.
revert to single-family housing. That is,
I mean, there's all sorts of structures in town which are allowed to exist even though they don't conform to current zoning because they're grandfathered, right? So one would think that all of the awkward buildings would, you know, they wouldn't have to tear them down. They're allowed to exist because they're grandfathered. I'm just worried that this is a very broad statement, 9.3.1. They're totally lawfully conforming to the zoning bylaw.
Would it be useful?
Not to some parts of the zoning bylaw, but to the zoning bylaw.
Would it be useful to ask?
Overlay district is what's going to make them conforming. That's the only thing that will ever make these structures conforming, is the adoption of this bylaw.
Would it be useful to ask town council about this two sentences that say structures and structures? They both lead with the word structures. Does the word structures eliminate the issue of use? You know, so do you, when you interpret these two sentences, is it structures only, or do you have to say structures, not uses?
I don't think you have, no, because the structure and use is distinguished in section 5.
I agree. I'm just trying to double dot the I.
Right, well, let's.
Every use occurs in a structure, so it's not, I mean, they're different, but you can't,
I mean, do we have a list of questions for town council? Could this be a quick question? I don't see it's an issue. It seems clear to me, but, you know, to Bill's point, could it be a loophole?
Mark, wasn't this one of the things that Robin commented on?
She did.
I think she did, yeah.
She did. Because we mulled this over quite a bit, and
My reading of the sentence is quite clear, but I understand Bill's
I
question.
understand you're completely divorcing structure and use.
It's
and
very,
I'm
it
saying
says
that-
structures very clearly and emphatically, and it's the first sentence,
But you
the first
couldn't-
word in
you
each
couldn't-
sentence.
You couldn't use this sentence in any way that wouldn't at least somewhat make an inference about use. That's my concern. Or it doesn't matter. It's if the structure, regardless of its past use, if the structure is in conforming to the Hamilton zoning bylaw, I'd like the town council to say that does not mean that you can take that structure and throw any use into it, and it will be conforming to the zoning bylaw.
Bill, these structures are, it's a totality. This is dealing with structures. Table 2 is dealing with uses. The structures are only conforming if this overlay district is adopted, and the uses in Table 2 are only permitted if this bylaw is adopted. So I have town council's comment with respect to that section. And her comment was, if they are deemed lawfully conforming, they are not existing non-conforming and not subject to Section 5 of our zoning bylaw. Do you mean legally non-conforming? And the answer is no. So what would happen is if we didn't say these were legally conforming, is that every time anybody wanted to do anything with these buildings, they'd have to get a variance.
Okay, fine. If the town council says that, then I'm totally
And
fine with that.
so we took.
I'm fine with that.
Took that to heart, and we do not intend to have the ZBA, interpreting Section 5,
Okay?
with
If the
respect to
town
this.
council says that, then I'm fine with that.
Okay. So back to, any more comments on Table 2? Table 3? Well, we're still on Table 2. We've fixed some of the confusion with respect to Table 2. And, if I seem testy, please forgive me. I mean, I can't tell you. This must be the 100th iteration of this table. So, but the clearer it is, the better. So we've agreed that small scale is less than 2,000 square feet.
yes.
Maybe we should say 2,000 square feet or less while we're editing. That makes it,
Yeah.
that puts a cap on it. Okay, all right. Are we ready to turn to table 3?
Yep.
Any comments on table 3?
The only thing we have to square away and make it more consistent, again, Mark, do we have a definitions, spelling for dwelling, multifamily, and townhouse? I mean, the old code had a dwelling, comma, multifamily, one word, small f. The town center bylaw had multi-family, capital F, dwelling. So we have kind of two coexisting definitions. Is there one that overrides everything?
I would say the town center, we're amending that, so I would go with that version, although, to be clear, that hasn't been approved by the AG's office yet,
Right.
so.
Right.
But I doubt that's something they're going to flag.
Because we just had different spellings throughout, you know, for all the titles. We've been trying to get just a sequence of consistency going on here.
Good luck with that.
Yeah.
I mean, if you go through our town bylaws, it's
Yeah.
notable for inconsistency. I mean, not in terms of hyphenation and things like that. You know, so the general bylaws for the town, it's hyphenated. This is hyphenated too, but many places throughout the bylaw is
Yeah.
not hyphenated, it's just one word. So
Okay.
that's a revision for another day, the
Okay.
whole thing. So I think we can do our best with respect to the
Yeah.
definitions with what we have, but the substance, multifamily, is the same whether it's one word, hyphenated,
Okay.
or hyphenated with a capital F.
Just be
I think
consistent.
we-
on this.
Yeah, that's the best we can do.
Yeah.
Okay. And then table 4 and table 5.
Want me to talk about the?
Oh, sure, yeah.
Table 4, there was a question by Gordon Conwell about row number 1, dwelling multifamily, LC 1 and 2. And the question was, shouldn't the 8,500 and the 26,000 be raised to include the 10% extra? And the thought here was that no, because these represent, the actual building footprint, the largest of LC1 is 8,450 square feet, so I made it 8,500. And then building floor area, it's something like 25,351 or something like that. So I made it to 26,000 as a rounded up number. That does not include the 10%, which is an option if they elect to do it. So, but not knowing they will do it, I put in the building footprint as the buildings do exist. So the 8,500 represents the largest building in LC1, and the 18,500 represents the largest footprint in LC2. Same with the building floor areas. 26,000 is the largest building in LC1, and 55,000 is the largest in LC2. Dwelling townhouses are based on typical townhouse dimensions to give you roughly 2,600 square feet per unit, per dwelling unit. Senior housing, roughly the same thing. 5,000 for a pair of buildings, 6,000 for a total building area. So you have a smaller upper floor than you would have on a lower floor. Long-term health care. In investigating further, the Riverbend is actually 75,000 square feet, so that's the building floor area. That was the model. That could accommodate up 80 to 100 beds. And the building footprint could be larger. It's not just 75,000 cut in half, but it could be probably significantly larger on the ground level, 50,000. But the total floor area is 75,000. And then a repurposed existing educational assembly building, 40,000 square feet actually would be Kerr Hall. 75,000 is the actual building area of Kerr Hall, which is the biggest on the upper campus. All of the others are smaller. So these are the maximum sizes for that. And then, of course, the heights. So I think that's squared away now. I think Gordon Conwell is looking at that information.
So what's different on that than what we have, which is more updated, is there's a footnote 2 that says about that 10% extra. And there's next to the 26,000 and the 55,000, just for people who are in the audience.
Yeah,
That
they were-
information,
That's a good question.
because you were just saying.
I don't
you
have
were-
the-
I know, you
don't
were
have
just
the-
sharing that, but I wanted
Yeah.
to make sure people
Yeah.
understood that that's actually footnoted on.
That was a request by Gordon Conwell to put that note in there, and I think
Yeah.
that makes sense. And that was really in reference to the multifamily dwelling, where a 10% maximum expansion would be by special permit. So that would be that number.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I just
thank you. Yeah.
wanted to clarify so that it's actually in writing on this table.
Yeah, I updated
Yeah.
that, but I didn't get a chance to
Yeah,
get it.
that's fine.
Get it
I-
out, get it posted on the website, right. Any other questions on 4?
I just had a philosophical, I mean, I guess we've defined a maximum floor area, we've defined open space requirements. And there's other requirements that set forth restrictions on how a building can be oriented on the various, within the various districts. Is there, what's the reason for providing
A footprint?
a footprint requirement in the bylaw?
Well, the reason for doing the dwelling, the multifamily dwelling, is they're all existing. That's number one. And we said they can reuse those buildings, or if they rebuild them, it's a special permit. But these are the largest you can have on both LC1 and LC2. The townhouses, the reason is they're typically townhouses, 3 to 6 units that are built horizontally, not vertically. And that's important so that every residence has the 2 floors. It may be senior housing or not necessarily, but I think that would be up on the top, on the upper campus. The senior housing, we're looking at basically duplex, similar to the Boulders type, probably in the middle campus. So these are based on those figures, and actually it was one of the scenarios, the low-density scenario that Jonathan and I worked out for the middle campus, about the size of, recommended the size of the Boulders complex. So that doesn't build too much in the middle campus, so we're trying to balance where is the majority of the building going to happen and where should it, we're hearing from different people and we're hearing from the board, less perhaps on the middle campus rather than balancing them equally top and bottom. Leave it up to Gordon Conwell to make that decision. They have the overall building square footage. We have the FARs, which will limit, even if they decide to go into parcels, every parcel will have that same FAR. The sub-district will have that FAR number. What that does is put a cap on the building in any particular area. And what the footprint does is to put some character to it to say that these buildings will not be overly large. They will be consistent with maybe large family homes in that area. So we were trying to come up with, deal with character by dealing with the footprint, the height, and the maximum area. That was more about character, so it doesn't get overbuilt and with mega buildings. no more multifamily on the site. And then, so we needed some numbers. The only thing we haven't done is put in, you know, I think, I talked with Marty about this, it may be in the bylaw now, but put spaces between buildings. Buildings cannot be any closer than 20, 30 feet, something in that order. But, you know, it's, I think when we get to, Table 5 is actually the summary where everything really happens there, and it tells you exactly what can be done, and I think we want to spend a little time on that table to see how that sets up a scenario. So we're not designing anything, we're trying to just sort of limit sizes to buildings, where they get built, and, of course, uses we talked about, so.
Thank you.
Yeah, and then, so any other questions on 4? Table 5 is density standards. This is kind of a summary of where we arrive at after all this examination. And this is one that, this is one where what had happened here, the initial Table 5 that I had, I was using numbers that were based on a drawing given to us by Gordon Conwell. However, it didn't have the right A&R lot sizes. I was informed later that the A&Rs are actually this number, not that number. So I had to go back and kind of change the sub-district development areas. They had done some numbers, but I did my own calculations on these, and they're going to be reviewing them. But what we have in those 3 categories are sub-district developable area, which is the boundary of each of the sub-districts minus any non-buildable area, either wetlands or steep slopes, anything greater than 15%. So LC1 has no steep slopes on it, so that is the actual area that the 6.59. Can you go to the next? Do you have the other one, Mark? Maybe not. The one I sent to you this afternoon. So Lower Campus is 6.59 acres, LC1. And the sub-district gross building area, 101,204, is all of the building floor area for each of the 4 dormitories in LC1. That's the total area, plus the 10% in this case, because it's anticipated they're going to do that. So I wanted to figure out that number. So that does include the build-out of 10%. And that gives a sub-district FAR of 0.35. LC2 did have area that involved a lot of steep slopes, about 36,000 square feet, and somewhere in that order. So the sub-district developable area was 4.48 acres. And then the sub-district gross building floor area is 112,626. That was consistent with what Gordon Conwell had. But it comes up to a sub-district floor area ratio of 0.58. Yeah, that's it. Middle campus, one of the things we do not have at this stage, but it's just a very quick change. I've asked Gordon Conwell to provide us what they're carrying for their middle campus square footage, because if LC1 changed in size and LC2 changed in size, the upper campus did not change in size, Heritage Landscape did not change in size, it means the middle campus changed a little bit. And it's going to be insignificant, but it changed, and we want to get the exact number. So the 2 things that could have changed, middle campus and natural zone, those are the 2 areas that are adjacent to the lower campus areas. Again, minor change that, as soon as we get that number, I'll update this chart. But it's going to be insignificant. The difference is minor, but in terms of the overall, the FAR, the building areas will remain the same, the district gross building floor areas. So the middle campus, we have that range of floor area ratio, 0.05 to 0.12. And then on the upper campus, we have the range 0.10 to 0.16. That gives a range of sub-district building floor area of, for the middle campus, 43,000 to 93,000. And then the upper campus, 92,000 to 143,000. Now, that range doesn't mean you can go to the maximum in both of those, because you're limited in terms of how much you can build. If you scroll down, you're going to see how much so we can see the bottom row. Yeah. The maximum you can build is 400,000 square feet on the entire site. So if you increase the area in the middle campus up to 93,000, you're going to have to reduce the upper campus down to 92,000. If you go with a minimum of 43,000 on the middle campus, you can go up to 143 on the upper campus. And that'll keep you in the range of 400,000 square feet maximum. And the 0.18 is the FAR that controls everything in this. So the total site, if you look at the bottom, total site 50 acres, 50.3 acres, 2,194,340 square feet. So that's how this particular chart sort of summarizes everything. We decided at the last meeting that rather than fix an FAR on the middle campus and upper campus, allow flexibility so that Gordon Conwell can decide if they're going to sell, if they want to divide the upper campus, say, into two pieces. They want to keep Care Hall on one of the pieces, roughly 10 acres or 9 acres up there. Then they could sell one half of the upper campus, or they could sell part of the middle campus. I think if they want to get value out of the middle campus, they're not going to use 0.05. They're going to add 50,000 square feet to that. That means that 50,000 comes off the top of the hill. And so that's the balance that Gordon Conwell will have to weigh in terms of how they're going to sell those parcels. So that's the idea there. And yeah, it's kind of a lot to consume, but
I just noticed, did you say you were subtracting in this first column? Because it should be a division, 6.59 divided by,
no, if you look up on the top header there, it says acres hyphen GSF. So the 6.59 is the acreage, and 286,692 is the gross square footage. So it's not an arithmetic operation there.
And Bill, I wonder if it's worth, although in this moment we heard you and we understand the table, I wonder if it's worth articulating it below the table, how you came to the FARs, and just as importantly, like you said in that last column, that you can't go over the $400,000, so you can't go to the max. I wonder if all of that you just explained that helps us now understand it should be articulated in the bottom so future readers could understand as well.
It says 0.18 max. The only thing you might do is you might say maximum total property development, so that everything in the
Overall
gray,
property, yeah.
that everything in the gray column is a max. You know, that'd be
Yeah.
a slight clarification, but the 0.18
Yeah.
controls it. They're all sort of,
flexible?
not flexible, they're conversions. One metric is converting to another, is converting to another. So if you have the 0.18 as a maximum, that mathematically also controls the others as well. So it's formulas, it's not independent numbers.
This is density for new development, not counting what's already in these districts, right?
No, the legacy buildings are built into.
The legacy buildings are included, so when it sells LC 101,000, that's with any that's existing plus new, would be limited to 100,000 square feet.
The LC1 is all existing buildings. Yeah.
But
There's
I think-
no legacy in
I
it.
think we should add a footnote that this number in the third column includes the 10%.
Yeah, I was going to suggest
Right, I
that.
think, yeah, that's what I was waiting, I already did that to hear. Because we didn't include it in the other one.
Yeah, this was because of the use of the buildings
Yeah,
as
no,
apartment.
it makes sense.
They need an elevator, yeah. So that was the number that,
But just to clarify, the .18 max, that controls the other
This
numbers as
includes
well.
all the legacy buildings.
It's a formula.
yeah, everything is coordinated up there.
Right.
In fact, I looked at the 75,000 square foot building, which is Care Hall.
Yeah, but
If we kept the FAR at the top
this is the land in each area,
at the top of the hill at point,
and this is, there's 100,000
I think it was,
square feet.
we got the FAR at .16, say, on the upper
in
campus.
each of these two Ls.
If you run through the math, what size lot would a 75,000 square foot building
Characterizing what's
need to
already
sit
there.
on to meet the
Plus
FAR? It's about
10%.
9.5 acres. So that could sit on one half of the top of the campus
Okay, plus 10%.
building. So you could actually keep that building
Existing plus 10%.
on the top, because that's probably the most
The
useful.
middle campus
And,
is, there's nothing existing.
You know, if it could be converted to
That's
a
all
use that,
new.
like a senior care housing, I think I mentioned before. You know, that's an option where they could take the wings off going toward the south and put an addition of 25,000 square feet there.
No, there's more.
Still
No,
have
no, 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 no.
75,000 square feet for that
Because
building,
The legacy in the upper campus.
and then put a lot of 9.5 acres.
Includes all
And that
those
would leave
commercial buildings.
another roughly 9.5 acres on top of the hill. So, yeah, all the numbers should work out here in terms of,
So this is what, the final column, we're still sort of struggling a little bit here.
yeah,
The final column is what the,
how much you can build.
no, it's how much you can build, including the existing uses, the existing
What's there,
buildings,
yes.
right?
Yeah, we don't know if the upper
This is a
campus
standard that applies to the whole area, and if the existing uses, I mean, I understand the existing uses in LC 1 and 2 are pretty close to these numbers. So that, these numbers include existing uses plus 10%? But when I get to the middle
Only
campus,
LC 1 and 2 is the 10%. The middle campus to get to .05, which is the smallest one, does, two buildings that we're trying to protect are the retreat
there's nothing
house.
really in the middle campus aside from the,
Pilgrim Hall and
Pilgrim
Gate.
Pilgrim Hall.
and what's the size of
Retreat house.
Pilgrim Hall? So this,
Pilgrim
It's
Hall and Retreat House.
15,000 plus, they wanted.
okay, so what you're doing is you're saying you can take the 15,000 plus from these numbers, and that's the amount of new development allowed, the maximum.
Yeah,
And it's just unclear, new development as opposed to total development, existing plus new.
we're giving them the option to use the buildings or not use them. And if you don't use them, the numbers are still there.
Again, Bill's
Right.
point is the wording. If a developer came in, dropped in from Mars, it would be helpful to say, total site property development, parentheses, existing and new combined.
Right.
You know, aggregate, that's all. It's, again, looking at it from a navigation. It's not content, it's navigation.
So then I get to the upper campus, okay, and all the commercial buildings there, the institutional buildings, are much greater than those numbers. So.
They're 166,000, which means some of those have to go away if you add anything to the middle campus.
It's like having a budget. You know, you can use your budget over here, but you can't exceed your budget.
So if you want to sell the upper campus and you build something in the middle campus, you're going to have to deduct whatever was built in the middle campus from the upper and then rebuild that as a new. So it's the
Okay, and then,
sum.
so your clarification would take care of that.
Yes.
Right, existing and.
If the existing was greater than that number, then you'd stick with the existing. You couldn't tear it down. I
Right.
mean, you couldn't
Well,
add to
you
it.
could, but you could tear part of it
Yeah,
down and rebuild part of it.
Jonathan?
It's an overall
I think
budget.
Jonathan's point is well taken then, or needed.
Jonathan, could you work with Emil to get
Sure,
precise language
Yep.
that clarifies this point
sure.
about how it's for,
It's an aggregate. It's an aggregate
It's an aggregate.
mixing, and you can move the scales around. But we'll figure out some words for it.
Yeah, we need some words
Again,
there for that.
You know, what I think is useful is, you have to understand that folks have been in this for a couple of years, and you're in the trench, it's hard to see out of the trench.
Right.
And it takes some work to get out of the trench and imagine what a
No,
developer
I'm just
or
coming
somebody would
down,
look
I'm
at
looking
it
at the
from
numbers
fresh. Yeah.
totally from outside the trench.
Got it, got it,
okay?
got it.
Right, so it might be that we need just a footnote for the caption with some text.
Yeah, yeah. It could be worth, what I would suggest is, as an exercise, we always talk about is get your head out of the trench, is get our heads out of the trench and look at it and try to misinterpret it. You know, look at each chart, look at each table, and imagine you're a developer who just came in from the West Coast and you're looking at this for the first time, you have no idea what the purpose of this is, and try to misinterpret it and clarify.
So you see our dilemma. I mean, we have had something like this on the table for a long time.
Sure.
We're kind of in the trenches.
Yep.
We have been relying on you at every meeting to tell us what's wrong, and now that we're like at the end.
Well, Bill's our
and we need to
Bill's
have
our
public
litmus test here, so.
comment, we're getting this feedback, which
Bill's
I
a great-
would
That's
love
great.
to have received.
Bill's a great litmus test, and I'll help with the
about
wording.
a month ago, but I'm going to ask you to
Sure.
be, text drafter, because you're outside the trench. We're in the trenches now.
Yeah, I heard you volunteer for this.
I'm not, it's not a volunteer.
Yeah, total
He's
allowed
ordered
build-out,
to
or
do
something,
it.
some term like that.
So-
Okay, got it.
so I understand it. I'm hoping that we have at least talked about this enough that with that text, it will be understandable. Because, Bill, it doesn't matter whether you reuse the existing building, tear it down, you still get, a certain square footage. So you could reuse the building, or you might not, but those are the maximum square footages that are applicable. Tear it down, fine. Reuse it, fine. But those are the max.
So they're starting with 397,000 square feet, and they wind up with 400,000 max. So
Okay.
that was the goal.
Yeah, so at this point, I think we've now, made our clarifications to these
Yep.
tables, and I would like to open this up to
I'm,
public.
Marnie,
comment.
sorry, I had one more.
Okay, okay.
One more. Emil started the discussion with describing total developable area, which did not include wetland, existing wetland setbacks and whatever else it is. Wetlands change over time. So I'm not sure when the last survey was done to define those.
Let me just say, there are no wetlands here except the natural zone.
In the
We're not
natural
building
zone.
in those, so it doesn't
Yeah.
really apply here.
So there are no, so the developable area today
The only
will
deduction-
always be the same developable area tomorrow
Yeah,
and
the only
100
deduct-
years from now.
Yes.
Okay.
The only deductions were for steep
Steep
slopes,
slopes,
15% or greater.
Erosion, and we shouldn't change too much.
Earthquakes.
Okay, thank you.
Which
Because I was questioning whether or not these, there's a helpful references in the square footages to understand what we're talking about, but really all you need is the FAR.
Well,
In the
you need
different
building
zones.
size for character. Yeah.
Well, I mean,
heights.
as far as this table goes.
Yeah, but there has to be
'Cause it's
agreement, there
yeah.
has to be agreement on the boundaries, and this is what Gordon Conwell has to agree with us, that those numbers, which came from them,
Yeah.
are the numbers that they would assign
That are
to
represented
LC
in
1,
the
2. They have to agree to that.
AR lots, yep.
Yeah.
Because our maps didn't match.
That's key, because that becomes the dividing number for the sub-district gross floor area to
Okay.
get the FAR.
It's helpful
So
to
that's
define
why
that.
that's
Yeah, yeah.
important. Yeah.
Yep.
One last comment there is FAR alone does not help define character in terms of scale. It's not, you have to have the other numbers that are in these charts to define scale. So,
No, but it is useful in the following sense, particularly for the abutters to think about. So what this final column says is, when all is said and done, and every development or redevelopment has taken place, you will wind up with, a tiny bit, maybe more total square footage than already exists on the whole campus.
Yes.
So you're not expanding the floor area of buildings on the campus appreciably beyond what's already there. You might reconfigure it a lot. You could tear all of it down and start again, or you could mix and match and do everything else.
yes,
But you're
and,
not really allowing,
the other numbers help dictate that it doesn't sprawl or be too tall or any of those things. It helps with
I mean,
character.
those
it's
are
an
all
and.
really important, but,
Yes.
but you're not actually adding, you're not going to allow people to add appreciably more square
The
footage
intensity of use is
than already
basically
exists
equal.
on the property.
Intensity of use is basically equal, but the other numbers help
Right.
define character.
Right. So, abutters, is that clear? We're not allowing appreciably more square footage of floor area than already exists on the site, of all permutations and combinations. It can look very different, obviously, but not any more than what's there.
Okay. Any further discussion? Because I would, given the time, I'd like to hear from the public at this point. If anyone has any comments?
Jake Fumara, 139 Essex Street. So I went through all the documents that you posted, and I actually printed out a few pages of notes for you guys. I'm going to leave for you, and I'll email them as well. I just finished them before coming in. But I wanted to just hit on a couple things. One thing that I think, Member Wheaton was mentioning, just so all my neighbors hear it, and I know that I have a lot of people watching this on TV after the fact, what I want to make sure we all understand is that if Gordon is to stay in their space the way it sits today, nothing else can be developed up there, right? Like, it's, their square footage is used up, essentially. So that sort of juggling of square footages is used up. Emil's shaking his head yes. So I just need to say it so that my neighbors hear me say it, because I'm telling them this, and it would be helpful for you guys to answer and say, yes, we understand it that way as well, so that they get that sort of comfort as well. I get the comfort in the documents.
That's exactly what Bill just said.
I agree. So I'm going to talk about the tables first, because I think they're just a quick few comments. On table 1, on the lower campus, there's an allowance for a 10% expansion. That's a 19,000 square foot expansion. That's a giant expansion. I understand that we changed one of the tables where the Pilgrim Hall is to a 35% expansion. I'm okay with that, because that's not that much square footage. 19,000 square feet is almost 20 units. And so my confusion there is, we're putting this FAR maximum on. If the new buyers decide to use 20,000 more square feet, we have an FAR maximum. Are they then using up square footage that Gordon has to use, or is that taken off somewhere else, or when is that calculated? Because I'm a big fan of the maximum, but it's confusing with 20,000 is just, when you talk about adding elevators and things like that, I don't think they're adding 20,000 square feet worth of elevators.
Well, they're going to add the elevators and still have 400,000 square feet, in other words. And we feel that that's needed really for function and for convenience for the occupants there. We also got kind of guidance from the Gamble and Abramson report, where I think they took some of the Harbor Light drawings and they projected, if you can, this is in their final report, they projected roughly 7,500 square feet per pair of dormitories, which for 3 then puts it up around 21,000 square feet for changes to the elevator shaft. It's more than an elevator and a stair tower. It is probably, it's where the occupants will go into the building, so there's kind of
Yep.
a reception area there. There's a little bit, and probably a small gathering room for, these are dormitories essentially, so they need a little bit embellishment. But those numbers came from Gamble. We got we thought the 10% was a reasonable number. It gives them a little bit of latitude. But that 10% is included in the 400,000. So
Is not.
Right, but when you
Is included.
when you do the 0.18 times
0.18 is the overall
times the
number.
square footage, you get to
That's the maximum.
394,000 square feet.
Yeah.
So, but then you're doing 400,000, so that's another 6,000 square feet. And I get it, where I'm just trying to get precise at this point, because we're all trying to get to a point where we can say
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
yes or no to this.
Yeah, yeah.
And so I'm just, when you say it's included, I thought the existing square footages were put in, but you're saying with those sort of bonuses as well.
The last chart, table 5, is kind of the summary of everything that can be done.
Okay,
Maximum.
okay.
It's the maximum.
I'll double check. I mean, I just
Yeah.
wanted to make sure that the intent wasn't that they could add 20 more units with the 20,000 square feet. Because it says 209 units, but for example, if they turned 2 bedrooms into 3 bedrooms and things like that, and just started making larger bedroom units instead.
I think the development agreement from last night addressed that. I don't know how many current bedrooms there are, but they talked about 209 units,
Yeah.
and they talked about 300 or 330? 330?
capping the number of bedrooms?
Yeah, they're capping the
Okay,
number of
that's great.
bedrooms, and maybe an additional few bedrooms in there, like,
Yeah.
I don't know, less than, I think, a dozen. I don't know what, it's 6, so,
Okay.
yeah. 6 more than they currently have. They have that flexibility.
No, I know, and look, I don't mean to be flippant.
Right, no, that's
I
fine,
don't
but
mean to be
I-
flippant
it
at
was the
all when we
first-
talk about like a dozen bedrooms. To me, that's a dozen cars, right? So it's like,
Right.
I live there, so it's like,
Right.
these little square footages add up over time, so that's where I'm pushing for that. So next is in table 1, the natural zone. It just feels like I'm all for the proposed security facility, just putting some maximum square footage on it, whatever it can be, 500 square feet, whatever they think it needs to be, just so that there's never in the future any sort of concern. So jumping to table 2, I will tell you that the use chart, and Mark, I don't know if you can pull it back up, but this is what I was trying to point out where some of the confusion is, and I've gotten this question from a few different people, is that, thank you, is in the first section of residential, one of the rows is legacy buildings. In the second section of commercial, we don't have a row for legacy buildings, which is where I think some of the confusion is. I think what you talked about with more superscripts is fine, and you can keep adding them in. But when I see legacy buildings permitted, does that mean that residential legacy buildings allow all those different kinds of residential uses? So for example, in a legacy building that's 15,000 square feet, you could put in 30 studio units? Like that's where,
Legacy buildings refers to 3 buildings.
I agree.
And we, at one point, had like a parentheses, and we listed those 3. So
Yep.
it got a
Yep.
little bit more elaborate. It does not include any of the multifamily.
Yep.
They're not, we originally we're using the word historic buildings, but there was an objection to that, and I can see why. So we went to legacy as a descriptor.
My suggestion would be where you have business, professional office, other commercial.
Going to add legacy building.
Put legacy buildings there. But that didn't answer sort of my initial question was, in the legacy buildings, which total 40,000 square feet, something like that, like the
Yeah.
3 legacy buildings, could you put, I don't know, 8,500 square foot studios in those by these definitions, or are we prohibiting that? Because I think the way it's written now, like this, and the way we show it, you could do that. And I just want to make sure that's the intention.
Yeah, there are 2 buildings, 14,731 for the
Yep.
retreat and 15,531
Yep.
for Pilgrim Hall on multi-levels. So they're fairly small footprints, and what you can do in there. So are you saying, can you fill up one commercial use
Well,
at
we have these
15,000?
residential uses listed, right? Existing dwelling, multifamily, dwelling townhouse, senior housing. Then we just say legacy buildings are allowed residential. So we're allowing anything, any type of residential in the legacy buildings. I just want to make sure that's the intention.
That is the intention.
That is the intention.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's the retreat, because Pilgrim Hall, as I understand it, it had dormitories on the upper level there. I don't know whether they're going to use them again, or that could be used.
Okay.
What we're trying to do is preserve those 2 buildings primarily, the retreat house, and because we think it has sort of historic value for the community.
Yeah, so that gets to another one of my sort of gating issues, right? The retreat house.
Yeah,
I'm asking you, and I think it's a gating issue for the neighborhood, that's taken out of the commercial. There was a discussion that happened with Merwin. Merwin got up in front of the select board and said that the seminary is okay and asked just for commercial in Pilgrim Hall and the Gatehouse. The next night, The planning board said, we think it might be good to have weddings and use a function hall at the retreat house. A wedding to me is a lot of people, a lot of traffic on a Saturday. I think I don't know how many parking spaces are at the retreat house. My guess is it's 25, 30 from when I walk by there. But utilizing, like, there's all sorts of stuff going on. I want to get to a yes vote, and I feel like there's some sort of stepping backwards with asking to make the retreat house, and I get it, to you guys, it's 15,000 square feet of 400. To me, it's 75 cars. Because and I'm not worried about their use. I hope they're there for another 50 years. But if someone else comes in, they're gonna need 6 cars per 1,000 to park. I'm okay conceding that for Pilgrim Hall and the Gatehouse. And Merwin and I had great talks about that, which I think might have led to him getting in front of the select board and saying that. But then we come in front of this board and we're talking about weddings and function halls and things like that.
Well, I think that, number one, you have to remember that even though these uses are permitted, they're still subject to site plan review. So if there's insufficient parking, that limits what can happen in these buildings. And for example.
No, for the legacy buildings,
For the-
office will not be subject to site plan review.
What's that?
For the legacy buildings, which the retreat house is, office will not be subject to site plan review. It's right there, it says permitted.
Right, but in the text of the bylaw, it says uses permitted by right are subject to site plan review. Just because it's permitted by right doesn't mean it's not subject to site plan review.
Emil, is that how you understand it? That it
It's-
still needs to go
it's
through site
in-
plan review,
it's in
even
the
if it's allowed by right?
Yes, it's in the text.
Yeah, sure.
Maybe you're confusing special permit
I think I'm confusing,
with
I think
site
you're
plan
correct.
review.
I think you're
okay?
correct. I think you're
Site
correct.
plan review isn't a yes or no. It's like you need more parking spaces, you need to configure the building so that it can actually do a
Right.
wedding.
You're right. I'm
as opposed
definitely
to, no,
confusing those two.
we don't want weddings.
So
okay?
even more so to my point, the idea of the heritage landscape is to preserve as much of that as possible. And now we're allowing uses on it, or we're trying to push uses on it that the seminary doesn't want, the abutters don't want, but I guess the planning board wants, which will increase parking, and you're telling me that my comfort is it'll go through site plan review.
Yes.
I don't know where that parking will come from.
So it may not be feasible for it to be a function hall.
Then why are we I'm asking you to take it out to try and get the neighbors to a yes vote on this
But I
in
think
a month.
there's a little bit of, pants on fire here. I mean, number one, that building is not that big, and so.
15,000 square feet.
Right, but but you're not going to have a function on the second, third floor. It would be in basically the square footage of the first floor.
Okay, so 7,500 square feet. How large do you think a function hall is?
It's unlikely that's going to be a wedding venue, honestly, because it doesn't have the spatial requirements. for
Great,
that.
so now let's call it an office building. 4 to 6 cars per 1,000 for a suburban office building. 4 at 15,000 feet is 60 cars. 6
Right.
is 90 cars.
Yeah.
So I said 75. There's not 75 cars, and the seminary's not using it to that density, but someone else who's using it for profit will use it to that density.
But if there's no parking, it can't happen.
So why are we putting
I
it
know,
here?
so my question is, if the abutters and the seminary both agree, is there a reason why we would want something different? Because if the seminary and the abutters don't agree, we're not gonna get a 2/3 vote. So it depends on how, is this like an issue that people are gonna make or break their decision? And why are we, as the planning board, feeling that we would want that additional thing? I don't know. I'm just trying to understand. I think you brought up a good question, and if we're looking to pass this, I think we, 2/3 is we can't have a lot of people showing up not voting for it with the 2/3 vote. So I don't know. To me, it just kind of seems like a no-brainer, just to take it out, but
I think if it
I'm
were
not
any
sure.
other building, it's because of the historic nature of that really complements the landscape area around it. And I think, we talked at the last time, Pat, I think, thinks those buildings are going to be torn down because they are expensive to rehab. And, you know, you can't make it a single-family house. You could be maybe a couple of condos in there, but are they going to spend the money to do that on those buildings? So we're trying to preserve that history for Hamilton because of the nature. It's culturally significant building, if not architecturally significant. And
Well,
So-
let's just ask the seminary. If we remove commercial uses for the retreat house, is that something, we added it, you didn't ask for it, now we're getting all this pushback. I think we should keep residential use for the retreat house.
yeah,
I certainly think a bed and breakfast could be a nice addition for the retreat house. That would be a commercial use. But if this is the kind of situation that we're in, where you didn't ask for it originally, are you willing to have it removed as a commercial use?
We want to get to yes, and Jake and I have had good conversations. So we were willing to limit it to the Pilgrim Hall and Gatehouse. So if, and I'm speaking to the people listening and will watch later, if Jake can convince them that I think it's a fair thing, that it would not be commercial. We appreciate it. We're speaking against our interest, obviously, because it's worth more with those kinds of flexibilities. But to get everybody there, we certainly are concerned about the abutters, and we want them to join in, not just be against us, but be for this. So we would be willing, as much as we appreciate it, we'd be willing to waive that.
To waive the commercial use, keeping the residential use.
Keeping the residential, correct.
Would there be any use to that building, any commercial use to that building that you would find acceptable?
Yes, are you asking me?
Yes.
If we make those special purpose, it doesn't prevent commercial uses. You know, if it's going to be something that generates traffic and so on, well, then we wouldn't approve it. And if it's going to be a harmless commercial use or a beneficial one, then we could allow it. So we don't have to, I mean, why don't we just make that a special permit?
I think that's what we're talking about.
It already
It's
is a
whether or not to
special
be-
permit.
It's whether or not to be permitted by right or special.
Right.
That's
Residential by right, and commercial by special permit.
Right, we
pretty
could just add the special permit for the heritage landscape for any type of commercial use. And that way, would that be satisfactory?
Yeah, I think the goal is, look, I have 40 neighbors coming to my house on Thursday night, right? And my goal is to tell them, look, I'm comfortable with this, here's what we should do. What I'm trying to get out of this is what is the maximum amount of commercial space that will ever be on this site? And it sounds like allowed by right will be what the offer seems to be is the Pilgrim Hall and the Gatehouse, and then by special permit would be the retreat house.
and long-term care.
Long-term care is fine. I mean, that's no traffic. That's like the best case.
All right, done.
In all worlds.
We can move on.
Okay, so the next issue that I had was in superscript 6 on table 2. We define small scale as 2,000 square feet. I just want to point out 2,000 square feet is not a small retail space. It's not a big box store. I think that I'm all for daycare, although 2,000 square foot daycare is probably on the smaller side. But I will tell you, like, if it's a Starbucks, I envision similar to like at Beverly Hospital, where it's like a 150 square foot Starbucks, and then people sit in the lobby and have their Starbucks. I want to just be clear that I don't want retail up there. Like, I don't think anyone should be traveling to the site to get retail there. Like, that doesn't feel like the intention with everything that I've read in here. And I would ask that you reduce that size from 2,000 to something drastically smaller, because I just don't think that it's necessary. I get that it's still special permit, but it cracks the door the more that we put in here. So, I would ask that you sort of drop that down in size. In terms of,
Can you, what are you saying if 2,000's too much? What would you?
per building, 250 square feet. That's essentially a kiosk. And exclude daycare from that. I think daycare is if a daycare would go there, I don't think they will, but if they would, that'd be great. If someone wants to open a mom and pop daycare, I think I'm sure the zoning bylaw gives some leeway to someone who wants to open a daycare facility in their house or something like that, I would think, but I'm not totally up on that.
So another way to look at it, because the footprint is, in Pilgrim Hall, is 10,600 square feet. So if you limit it to 250, you could maybe have a half a dozen small retail shops in there or more. So, you're going to wind up with the same,
Wait, so sorry, restate what you just said, because that just confused me.
okay, the footprint, 10,600 square feet.
Yep.
So you could theoretically, if you use the 2,000 number, get 5 different types. You could have a gym, you could have a daycare, you could have, a little cafe or something like that, a few. If that does become a viable retail place for a developer, if you're just going to limit the individual area to 250, that means you could actually have 10,000 divided by 250, which would give you how many different retail units in there?
Well, so
In other words,
I agree with what you're saying, but your definition of accessory use must not be freestanding facilities, but must be secondary areas within the primary residential commercial establishment providing services. You're now assuming that they turn that into a strip center? Like, it has to be a secondary to what's primary to that building.
Well, I
An
think
accessory
Pilgrim Hall-
use is just,
Pilgrim Hall is
if there's an office in Pilgrim Hall, that they could put a 250 square foot Starbucks kiosk in there. That's what I'm saying. You're saying they'll put 8 250 square foot kiosks? I think that we're a little bit talking past each
No,
other.
What I was saying was that by limiting the 250, you're not going to limit the number of possibilities here. You're going to actually increase it. By making the small scale smaller, you're going to increase the potential of more of them to fill the same space.
There still needs to be a
So they-
primary use though, right? We agree with that.
Yeah, but Pilgrim Hall is the exception on the site, because that's,
This is for residential use as well.
on the upper level, be residential, perhaps. It's used as dormitories, I guess, now, or
I think
was.
you're bringing up a whole nother issue, which is that
I
our
think
ex-
the solution is that to differentiate small scale for accessory uses and for Pilgrim Hall.
Yeah.
So for Pilgrim Hall, if you wanted a gym, you can't have a 250 square foot gym. That's a home gym. That's not something that would be.
Oh, I don't want a gym. I don't think there should be a gym here. I thought you were talking about inside of a senior care facility.
No, we're talking about accessory uses. Okay, that's fine. We could limit in square footage. But for Pilgrim Hall, where we're permitting commercial use by right,
Yep.
you don't necessarily want to limit the amount of space each commercial entity could take up to 250 square feet.
So you want it to be okay for them to put a Gold's Gym in Pilgrim Hall? They can say it's to serve the other 13,000 square feet
Well,
of tenants in
I
there.
don't know how big Gold's Gym is, but I don't think, we're not talking about a mammoth gym.
Yeah, all these, as you know, all these fitness centers are huge now.
Has anyone been to the Core Pilates down at it used to be at Hamilton Crossing, but the
Oh,
parking
yeah,
got too
down
bad,
there.
so they moved it to North Beverly. That's under 2,000 square feet.
Yeah.
So would we want to put something like that in there? Because that's a pretty intensive use.
The one that was next to the rail station?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What,
I
the
don't think-
Hamilton Athletic Association?
Yeah.
I don't think that's 2,000.
That's a different one. There's,
It's still there, yeah.
Yeah, it's still
That didn't-
there. That's.
yeah, no, not that, not
That's the
that. I'm
type
talking
of-
about
That's the
the,
type of one we were looking
Yeah.
at.
That's the type of one, and I belonged there, and heck, there were maybe 3 cars or 4 cars in the morning.
yeah, no, that's not the one I'm talking about. I'm talking about it's a different use. My point would be that the definition of accessory use wouldn't seem to be 20% of a building. I would think that it was a much smaller percentage of a building, if we're just looking for an accessory.
If I could just clarify here, I think we're talking past each
Yeah.
other here. So let's just clarify that we're not talking about accessory commercial use in Pilgrim Hall. Pilgrim Hall's the exception. That can be a commercial building. So this accessory use is different it's other buildings other than Pilgrim Hall. So
Yeah.
that's where you're talking past each other here.
Yeah, that is correct. The accessory has to be secondary to the primary use, which means it could be in a dormitory, it could be
But that's nothing to do with Pilgrim
daycare in
Hall.
a dormitory.
Nothing to do with Pilgrim Hall.
No.
So Pilgrim
So
Hall's a special
here's my
case.
question. Could one of the residential buildings put a Chipotle in that's 2,000 square feet in one of the residential buildings? Call that an accessory use?
No, the accessories are all by special permit.
So so they'd come here and you guys would say no because it's Chipotle and not Honeycomb Bakery? I'm not trying to bring up problems. I'm just
know,
like
I know.
thinking that like 5 years down the road, none of us are here. I'm still living across the street and I'm coming to fight a Tate Bakery and I'm saying, or a Honeycomb Bakery because of the amount of traffic it brings. And I'm saying, look, that was never the intention of this. That was never the intention. But they view it as, well, look, there's a senior care facility and like we have all this parking that no one's using. We're going to put another Honeycomb outpost there. And with all the food delivery services, no problem. We're going to have people coming and picking stuff up. At 2,000 square feet, it opens the door to a lot of different uses, is what I'm saying, for an accessory use.
Yeah, the idea really was to provide an amenity for the people who are staying there, now that we have several hundred people residing on the property, is to make it convenient for the residents and their guests.
I get the
I think that
idea.
was
It's
the
just
idea.
really hard to zone around, right? Like, hoping that it's a farm stand, like the guy that
Yeah.
closed down the street, is like, it's going to be someone who wants to make money, and they need to make money, and that's what I'm trying to prevent against. And you bring it down to 250 square feet, and I think that makes it an accessory use as opposed to 2,000 makes it, I mean, how big's Honeycomb? Probably 1,500 square feet? And let's look at, everyone knows the traffic that generates. I mean, everybody drives from everywhere to go there. They could be anywhere in town and people would still go there.
Again, the
So-
2,000 is not applying to the accessory use. It's applying to small scale in Pilgrim Hall.
We'll have to clarify this.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
We will have to
Yeah,
clarify
thank
this.
you. I
But
appreciate
Let me
it.
just say this, though. I mean, I know that the butters have, an interest in keeping the traffic to a bare minimum, but I think there are other people in town who are looking at potential revenue from this site. So there are competing interests. I mean, it isn't as if there aren't people who would like to see the town earn some money from these.
Yeah, I don't know how that has anything to do with putting in a Honeycomb for 2,000 square feet, but I understand what you're saying. I'm trying to get you to a yes vote, which, when you talk about hair on fire, every meeting you've said, we can't talk about that. We got to get to December 9th. We can't reopen that. We can't reopen that. I've heard that about a lot of different issues, and so I'm trying to get to a yes vote on December 9th.
I think that the abutters have had enormous success in this process. Because if you recall, in November of 2023, there were more commercial uses on this campus than you could shake a stick at. And right now, it is entirely residential, except for Pilgrim Hall and the Gatehouse, and now the Retreat House, potentially through a special permit
Look,
process.
I
So think
agree,
you
we
should
are
be
getting
patting
there.
yourself on the
We
back.
are getting there.
You have
I
more.
I want to get to December 9th, and I want to not have me heckling you guys any longer, so I just have a couple other comments. On table 5, the maximum square footage, I think you guys were all sort of hitting the right nail on the head with, I like the idea of having, just really clearly stating the maximum, and I would just change that last line where it uses, and Mark, I don't know if you could pull that up, but just where it states development, it's just, I think there was some confusion, and you
Yeah.
all talked about it, but I think clearing that up, that this is I give a suggested name for it, I forget what I call it, but you'll see it in my notes, but I think that, what did I call it? Sorry, table 5. Yeah, maximum square footage allowable in all zones combined, just to really leave nothing to chance. But yeah, that total site property development is just that's a little wonky to me. And then, look, I'm gonna just say the last and most gating issue, which is the GPOD. And I think the idea of waiving something on a 100-acre site that was built on science is really, really troubling and terrifying for this board to do. And what I would ask is that you waive it just for the 12-acre apartment site, and you say that you're excluding that site from this, or you're calling it, and I know there's a lot of discussion about this, whether you call it legally non-conforming, whether you call it conforming, doesn't matter to me, whatever town council comes up with. But I would tell you that you can't waive it. I really don't think that you should waive it for the other 88 acres, because without the seminary or another developer, which I think the next developer who comes in would need to get a hydrologist, you know, geotechnical studies, all sorts of things to prove to the town and everyone that we don't need that water, that we don't need what's under that land, and that the GPOD was incorrectly put on this site, and there's no way we're coming to that conclusion before December 9th. So waiving that is a very much so a gating issue that I don't think anyone here, including me, is capable of waiving or saying okay to, but I think there's a way to get the 12 acres and the 209 units passed with keeping the GPOD part of the other 88 acres.
Well, I think if the, my thinking, and we'd have to do the calculation, if the apartment lots are sold, then the remainder of the campus probably wouldn't be in the GPOD.
And the problem is, and it doesn't sound like you're aware of it, it's not just taking the 12 acres out for the LC 1 and 2. It's the percentage of GPOD on the site exceeds a limit so that the entire site has to be declared GPOD. It isn't just that the specific sub-district is in a GPOD, because almost everything is in the southern part, you know, half the middle campus, you know, all of the dormitories, all the buildings there, including retreat houses, in the GPOD. The problem is the percentage of GPOD on the 100-acre property hits a trigger point where you have to then declare the entire site 80,000 square foot, 2-acre zoning. That's the problem there. I mean, it would be, to me, kind of straightforward if Gordon Conwell were to section off the whole natural zone. That would change the percentage rate dramatically. And so you would not, even though it's in a GPOD, you don't have to consider the entire site GPOD, so you could then develop it.
I think if this, and I've brought this up years ago, and finally, you know, I addressed it as best I could, and town council didn't flag this. But if this property is in the GPOD, then we can rip up this Browns Hill overlay district. It's done.
But
You know, pick a lane. You
but-
can't have both.
But it is. It's in it.
But here we are.
Right, so what I'm saying to you is, instead of putting that on the table, what I'm suggesting, parse off the 12-acre site, like you're looking to do, no different than how they parsed off the Bridge Street lots, right? Like those still stayed part of the GPOD or whatever happened, and then say that the remaining 88 acres continue to live in the GPOD until someone proves otherwise. But for the 12 acres, so you still have the Browns Hill overlay district, but yeah, the GPOD still lives above it, and you need to satisfy that. Then the onus falls on the next guy to deal with it, the next development. But to just waive it completely and take a hatchet and get rid of it, I mean, I don't know. Someone's going to bring this up on December 9th, and somebody voting there is going to be like, wait a second, we're just skirting everything environmental? Like, who came up with this GPOD, and why'd they come up with it?
The GPOD was, I'm struggling for the right word, but not honored for Canterbrook, for Patton Ridge. It seems to be inconvenient when it comes to any form of development. Now, at 133 Essex, they had the ability, because it was raw land, to propose to carve out so much of the land as to take the remaining acreage out of the GPOD.
Yeah, I don't have a solution. right? But I'm telling you
I mean,
that, I don't think that continuing well, Canterbrook ignored it, so we're going to ignore it. We're just going to take ourselves
Yeah,
out of it. I
well,
don't know that that's the
actually,
right way to.
Ironically, we amended the GPOD to clarify its intention. So, I
Still
mean,
doesn't fit with what's happening here, is what you're saying, which I get. I mean, I understand it. I just don't, I continue to not think that taking a hatchet to it is the way to go about it. And it's going to be a struggle for me and others to get on board with just saying, hey, this 100 acres, we're just taking it out of this altogether. Because I agree with you, this has been brought up for the last 3 years.
Yeah.
And now all of a sudden saying, hey, because we did all this work on all this other stuff, forget about that thing, even though we all have been talking about it in the background. And that's a little, I hear you with the frustration. I'm there. I'm just saying, don't get rid of it, because it is a level of protection that people feel. And it's a hurdle that I'm trying to tell you, like, some council has to figure out a way for the next guy to deal with it. And it's not,
Well,
the apartments are there, right? Like, they're there. I get, like, that from the GPOD standpoint is like, they're already there, they're covering the impervious surface, they're doing what they're doing. But for the next guy, and that might be 5, 10, 20, 30 years from now, they need to figure out a way to satisfy the GPOD. And they need to figure out a way to say that I'm not putting too much wastewater, too many gallons into the sewer treatment facility. I'm not doing too much of this or that. So I think you got to figure out a way, or town council has to figure out a way to work their way around that without just taking a hatchet to the whole thing. Because taking a hatchet to the whole thing takes away a big protection on a big swath of land. With that, I'm going to give Mark a bunch of copies of this that you guys can take home and read tonight when you go to bed. But it's a lot of it you've already addressed, but it's just some cleanup stuff from the documents that I went through and sort of saw. Thanks.
Has anyone done the percentages? If you do take out the 12 acres on the remaining lot, do we have enough percentage of GPOD to declare the rest of it still in the GPOD?
Yeah,
If you
I
did?
ran the numbers on it, and I would have to go back to, because this was way before the A&Rs were drafted.
Yeah.
I can go back and look at what does 12 acres out of that do to the percentage on the entire lot.
The other question is, if you do the same move as the Chabaca Woods folks did,
Yeah.
you know, when you carve out the wetlands as some different lot definition, then it changes the metric as well. So there's all different ways to
Yeah.
carve up the land so that you get different percentages out of it. So it's not just ignoring it. It's looking at, you know, what's a realistic way to
We've been
divide up
asking,
the.
we've been asking for 3 years.
Yes,
to Get a
but-
ruling, including with town council.
Yeah, but it's really not the planning board's responsibility to, you know,
And it's actually Gordon Conwell's responsibility
Exactly.
too, to deal with that.
yes. But I think that there are ways to do it, but
Yeah.
somebody needs to put their shoulder to the wheel.
Does anyone
Speaking
else
of
have any-
percentage, I think we need to go back and check the FARs against the table 5, just the numbers. I think in updating the maps and getting the square footages, I don't know if the percentages, I don't know if the FARs are tying to the overalls when you multiply the two.
Well, the overall site property should
Point-
come out, I think the point, it's,
0.35 times 286, 692 is something like
no, that doesn't work, but the
1,000.
the totals, that's because the A&Rs were
That's what I mean, but once they're, yeah.
determined. The problem is, if they are completely rebuilt, LC 1 and 2, destroy all the dormitories or the apartments and build anew, you need that FAR to get to the same square footage because of the size of those A&R lots. I don't know if that's what you meant, but
I think what I mean is if you multiply 286, 692 times 0.35, it's 100,000. It's not the number that you represent here.
yeah, what you would do is take the 101, 204, divide it by the 286. I'll check it again. I think it's right. Divide it by the 286, 692, and that gives you the FAR. So take the building floor area divided by the developable area. See what you get.
Hi, I'm Chelsea Erickson, 36 Lorenzo Ave here in Hamilton, and I really am just here to encourage you. This has been obviously a lot of work, a lot of detail, and I think it's just really encouraging to see the work that the board has done, the seminary, the abutters, all coming to the table and trying to get to a yes vote, and you're in the home stretch. So thank you for this good work. I'm one of those who, as you mentioned, would love to see this influx of tax dollars. I also would love to see our neighbors and our friends at the seminary, professors, students, be able to continue to use the property. So I see that very much as a win-win. And I just want to thank you all for the good work that you've done and put forth to get us to December 9th and hopefully to a yes vote with that 2/3. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Nancy Dashkin, 215 Woodbury Street. I sent the planning board and the select board a detailed email concerning the GPOD. My husband and I have done a lot of research. We had the opportunity to learn a lot about the wastewater treatment facility that's currently operational on the campus, and we were really impressed with it. And I just want to start this explanation by saying we recognize that Gordon Conwell is doing an excellent job managing their wastewater currently. That's not an issue. It probably won't be an issue given the current wastewater treatment facility and the existing apartments. I can't speak to what would happen with future development because I think that there would have to be a really careful study done about the number of bedrooms increasing if the middle campus were to be developed and the upper campus and so forth. But the issue about the groundwater protection overlay is really important because of the way the water flows through and drains into the Miles River, affects the wells, and living where we do and having experienced the Mother's Day flood, I can assure you that the water tables in this area are really, really high. And if you don't have that groundwater protection overlay district, you don't really recognize the potential that increased development, not just wastewater, but the damage to the natural flow, the drainage and everything else that could be affected. I think it's really, really important to keep that groundwater protection overlay district. And I recognize that this is a really hard thing to do right now. And the comment earlier, well, then we can just throw this out. That's what makes this challenging and interesting and possible. I think Jake brought up a good compromise, and just because it's hard doesn't mean we shouldn't do it. I really, really believe that keeping that groundwater protection overlay is critical, and it could be the showstopper for December 9th, because people are concerned in this town about the environment. I'm concerned about it because I live there, and there's lots of reasons to think about whether you could even build another treatment facility if development required it. They had a big challenge just to find a better leaching field area when they had to move the leaching field. So I think there's a lot, of issue underground. And I think if you could come up with a compromise to deal with that groundwater protection, it would go a long way to a yes. And without it, I think you could wind up with some potential pushback that could be a showstopper. So please, really consider it.
Hi, Deb Safford on Maple Street. I'm going to say I wasn't really prepared, but there's something that's always been bothering me about all of this, so I'm sorry if this isn't really helpful to say this at this time. But what's bothered me about this whole process has been that I think everyone that I've ever spoken to in this community wants these apartments to go through. Like, universally, if the question was just sell the apartments, don't change the footprint,
I think it would go through. I don't know anyone that doesn't want it. Like, they exist, let them pay revenue finally, right? That just gets a lot of people who have been unhappy, happy, and it doesn't change a lot. But what we've done in all of your guys' work, so this is where I feel a little bit sheepish, because you guys have worked like dogs for years on all this, and I really appreciated how you've created a vision for what the campus could look like. But it's all kind of hypothetical, because it's contingent upon them not succeeding. And we want the seminary to succeed, right? I mean, I think they've been good neighbors. It's, you know, people have their beef with certain things, and I'm not sure it's all actually accurate, but whatever. Like, we have to love our neighbors, right? So if the groundwater thing is the deal breaker, and we can say, so I don't understand the whole thing about the groundwater in terms of the technicality of it, but if that's the deal breaker, can we not just have a vote, which is the dorms, and keep all the other zoning off the table? So we're just voting on that piece. And I know Emil's like, are you freaking kidding me? Like, no way. And I'm only saying that, like, and have there be maybe an agreement that says, should they not succeed, that there is like, they can't just do the single-family houses like they did on the other hill. You know, something like that. I know that that's what their zoning is. I know Marnie's shaking her head. You can't do that. But is there any other way to just parcel it off so we don't have to complicate it for people? Because I really think that universally people want those dorms to be made apartments. And I've just always wondered, why are we attaching the future zoning issues and sort of cementing everything? And maybe it's to protect us. I don't know. I guess it is to protect us. But if it's going to mess up the water, I mean, I live in the swamp, and when my neighbor's house suddenly, behind us, it was unbuildable lot. He knew someone in town. It became a buildable lot. We have water in our basement. So I understand water is a problem. And I just don't want this to not go through, because I think it really is the right thing for the dorms to become revenue. So if there's any other way to sort of nuance the future possibilities that would happen should they not succeed, because it's just all very hypothetical. Like, the stuff that we're arguing about is really very hypothetical.
Okay.
So thanks.
Jack Davis, 57 Lois Street, and again, I really appreciate the hard work that the planning board has been doing for the last 2 or 3 years. And I really hope that for the general interest of the town, that this can be across the finish line. And I understand the abutters' concern about GPOD and some hypothetical developer down the road, but in terms of other possible hypotheticals, the possibility of a hostile 40B takeover and developer who would then, we're facing a situation of 209 low-income houses in terms of what that might do to the character of the town, or real estate values near the perimeter of the seminary. That is also a downside risk to be considered, whereas I think what's on the table now looks for basically not any radical change that the seminary is proposing. And this committee, the planning board, has worked very hard to broker various competing interests, and I salute your concern for the common good that would provide for more housing for the town, more revenue, putting this back on the tax rolls. So I do hope that all hypothetical scenarios and the downside risks, not just to the town, but to the abutters, and a hostile 40B developer, 209 low-income houses, is that preferable than the plan that's already on the table?
Did you wish to say something, Merwin?
Well, thank you again, Marvin Walters, on behalf of Gordon Connell, also live at 4 Veranda Circle. Well, maybe just a couple of things, just in terms of the square footage, we're working to get the exact numbers now that we have stamped plans, so Emil, I'll work with you in terms of getting the final numbers so we can get those correct. Let me talk a little bit about the Groundwater Protection Overlay District, let me just ask one question. On Table 2, is that meant to be descriptive or restrictive? In other words, assuming that the wastewater treatment plant would need to be, rebuilt or located elsewhere, does that restrict that, or is that just intended to describe where it is currently?
Table 2?
Table 3, I'm sorry, Table 3.
Table 3.
My apologies. So it's, and of course, the suggestion would be that not be restrictive, but rather that there just is a wastewater treatment plant. And I think the planning board has, in the past, looked at placing components up, on up higher on the tennis courts, et cetera. So it just, if we could make sure that we're allowed to put that where it can go. It's limited where it can go, but sometimes those things need to be replaced.
Yeah, well, the understanding was because of all the infrastructure in place, the piping and so forth, that where it is now would be the most likely place it would be without going through enormous changes on the site, if that's what you mean.
His question was,
Restricted to that particular location.
You're not trying to restrict it?
No.
Okay, all right. So, yeah, maybe if that could be made clear that that's descriptive, but it can also be...
Well, anybody have any comments about that? Anybody?
yeah, I think it would be useful to clarify whether it's describing existing conditions or prescriptive, to
It's
Myron's
existing
question.
conditions,
Yeah. So, and that could be clarified.
Thank you.
We're identifying where the two are. because-
Right.
Right.
Because I don't know if it's even documented, the one next to C and D.
Yeah, that's how I read it, and then I'm applying the poor, guy from out of town who's never read it before, what he would think. So if we can clarify, that'd be great. I wonder if we could address the GPOD thing by limiting the waiver to the assumption that all of the effluent is treated on-site at a wastewater treatment plant. Because the main reason that's a concern, right, is because right now you put 50 houses up there with 50 septic systems for each house dotting the hill. If we were to say that waiver applies, in other words, it applies if the treatment plant then handles all the effluent. And then and we've got Bernie DeFelice here from Martinage, who's our consultant and the engineers that run the system and designed it 50 years ago. They've been doing it continuously since that. So he could speak if the board has any questions about that. But in other words, the DEP then completely regulates that, and it just wouldn't be allowed to work unless it works appropriately. And so I think it might be a way to solve everybody's concern here. The GPOD waiver is contingent upon a wastewater treatment plant handling all the effluent.
Can I just interject here for a moment? I have a little bit of background on how the GPOD was established and why it was established, just because it was a colleague of mine who worked on it. So it's an older bylaw, it's really outdated at this point, and it was really focused on managing density of single-family housing, to your point. You were alluding to it just now. And so with any bylaw, you have to create metrics. And as soon as you create the metrics, that's where things kind of get stuck. And so these metrics were really focused on single-family housing, and we're really talking about a very different way of developing here, where you're doing cluster housing, leaving more open space, and to your point, it's a carefully engineered approach to a more central wastewater management strategy. And so in some sense, we're comparing apples to oranges here. We're comparing single-family residence, low engineer caliber, low bar for single-family residence septic systems versus a highly engineered central wastewater treatment plant.
On every lot.
What's that? On every lot, yes.
That's
So to some extent, the GPOD almost doesn't apply to the situation.
Yeah.
But the problem is it's still there as a law. So I don't propose here to create, a written solution to this. But if you take the approach that it's there for a purpose, and there are other ways to achieve that purpose, I think we can get there, but we're not going to get there at this moment in this meeting. But I think there are ways to do that. And you've hit upon them, and
That's a good comment, I think,
So,
on it. That you are comparing two different things.
yes, the metrics do not match up.
Yeah.
So, and with the consulting an attorney, with consulting an engineer, I think that if all of us put our shoulders to this, including you folks, I think we can get to a good place. But what I'd like to do is I'd like to take away the characterizing this as hatcheting the GPOD. I'd just like to, not to make any personal comment on, on what the public is saying, but the idea here wouldn't be to ignore it, but to really understand where the GPOD came from, why it's there, what the metrics were based on, and adjust the metrics to this situation in an intelligent way, understanding the law and understanding engineering. That's all I wanted to say.
I think I might have the solution, so right now, and I'm hoping Jake is here, right now on page 2, permitted land uses, it provides that the provisions of the BHOD shall supersede the provisions of 9.1.5. 9.1.5 refers to any lot which has 1/3 or more of its total area falling within the GPOD must meet all the requirements of the GPOD. I think what we can do is say that certain provisions of the GPOD apply, and we can highlight them. So 9.1.8, prohibited uses, and it lists landfills, auto graveyards, storage of hazardous materials. And so we can go through the GPOD and find all the uses that are prohibited and those that require, well, they wouldn't even be applicable. But I can go through there and identify which provisions of the GPOD which would remain out.
Without gutting BHOD.
To the BHOD.
Yeah, without gutting it, though.
Without gutting it,
that's, yeah.
hopefully. So I'm thinking that what we can say is the provisions of the BHOD should supersede the provisions of the groundwater overlay protection district except for, and list those activities that would really be detrimental to the environment. Other than that, I really can conceive of no way around this conundrum. And I remember being at the select board in January of this year, talking about the GPOD.
Well, again, it may be something worth considering, though, that if the waiver is dependent upon a wastewater treatment plant on
Well,
site.
I was going to say, I can list those provisions that would remain applicable, and I can also condition it on the wastewater treatment facility handling all the effluent on the site.
Yeah.
It seems to me like that covers the issue, right?
I think it covers the issue.
The other thing I would just like to add from public comment is the GPOD really is not about water table, it's not about flooding, it's not about wet basements, not about any of those things. It's about water quality. So stormwater management, which is another bylaw that anybody who does any development on the site has to follow and has become more stringent since we've revised it. That's what manages things like amount of water coming off of a site. So I just wanted to separate those issues. So stormwater management is what really sort of manages water table and where water goes. The GPOD is about water quality.
Subsurface, yeah.
Subsurface water quality.
Right.
So separate issues with separate governing bylaws. So.
And then I think the last comment to make, we willingly went from 177,000 square feet of commercial as of right. In the last 6 weeks, we've gone from that, 177,000 square feet as of right, to now just Pilgrim Hall and Gatehouse, and then under special permit, Retreat House. So I would hope that the abutters who have pushed for that would recognize that at least those need to remain as commercial uses, because that's a substantial concession on our part. So I hope that there's not an attempt to claw back more there. And with that, at this point, we'll get those square footages to you, and a deep, heartfelt thanks for all the work that the planning board has done. And thanks to Jake and others who have been working with us as well from the abutters. So thank you.
Only because I feel like I was called back up here. I agree with most of what Merwin said. I would tell him that going from the 177,000 of commercial by right, I would say he went from none of this by right to now getting something by right. So it just depends on which angle you're looking at this from. But look, to get back to the GPOD, I agree with most of what Jonathan said. My hatchet comment is specifically with putting a line in that says the BHOD is not part of the GPOD. That's a hatchet, right? So when I look at the purpose of the Groundwater Protection Overlay District, which is frankly was not looked, because I saw Marnie made some changes in January of 2025. The purpose wasn't to be changed, to promote the health, safety, general welfare of the town by ensuring an adequate quality and quantity of drinking water for the residents, institutions, and businesses of Hamilton. I don't need to read the rest. Anyone else can go in and read it. All I'm saying is, let's try and kick the can for the rest of the site so that some engineer or somebody from not 50 years ago to today can come in and say, yes, we think that putting another couple hundred units or 100 units on the site, we can still preserve the quality and quantity of drinking water for the current residents of the town, as opposed to worrying about what else we're going to do after the fact. I think that we're looking for a silver bullet when we need to ask an attorney to look for a way around this just to preserve it for the other 88 acres, that I think some science needs to sort of happen.
I think I just came up with the solution, is identifying which provisions of the GPOD will continue to apply.
And I'm happy to look at it. I'm telling you, it was written with science, and I do think that there should be some science involved. I continue to believe that the reuse of the dorms as apartments will be a different use case than what it is now. And that will probably come into play for how much water this town needs and how much it will need going forward. That, yes, I hate to tell anyone this, later in the future, it might limit what else we can build on the remaining 88 acres, but that's a hurdle that we're not going to get past right now. So I hear you. If you keep
amount of water, that's separate from the GPOD. I mean, we could conceivably run out of water at any time, and that would curtail development, not just at the seminary campus, but all over Hamilton.
It's not separate from the purpose of the GPOD that I just read.
What I'm suggesting to you right here, right now, is I can craft language that would identify provisions of the GPOD which would continue to apply, including the purposes, and also indicate that the wastewater
That's great.
facility would have to handle all effluent from the site. And essentially, that does solve the problem, because the GPOD, as Jonathan pointed out, is geared toward residential development, and basically says if you have houses in the GPOD, they have to be on larger lots than they otherwise would need to be. That's inapplicable to what we have here. And so if you were to just say the GPOD continues to apply, then you would have to use the metric that's in the GPOD for single-family houses.
I agree with your comment that you made in January 2025, that it shouldn't just be based on a dwelling unit, but instead a buildable lot, right? Like, I agree with that. But I do think that, I think we're saying the same thing. If you write it in a way that keeps the GPOD intact, save for a few things that allow us to move forward with this, then yes, I get it. But I don't think that we should allow a development to go forward on the other 88 acres that takes away water from the rest of the town and makes the rest of the town run out of water. so that then we have to buy it from Beverly or somewhere else and use up the tax
metric
dollars.
that doesn't have anything to do with the GPOD bylaw or the use of the site. What I do think is a good point here is that it's very helpful to understand that the specific metric we're talking about is minimum lot size. That's the metric that's at odds, the lot size. Not any of the other purposes of the GPOD. All of the other purposes of the GPOD can be met in many, many, many other ways. The sticking point is the 80,000 square foot metric per dwelling unit. And again, that was, the focus of that was on single-family residence zoning.
Right,
So
right.
the answer is yes, yes, you can get there.
Right.
So.
I think I have the avenue. I think you'll be pleased.
Great.
I understand what you're saying.
I appreciate
But
it.
If we were to say the GPOD applies, then really this goes out the window, because now we're back to single-family houses, not on 1 acre lots, on 2 acre lots.
I think we've been saying that for 3 years, but you guys kept working at it, so I had to keep showing up to these meetings, so that's just the way it happened,
Well,
so.
you know, I keep wondering why, was it the planning board that had to address this issue? In the last analysis, to salvage all the work we've done, we had to do it, despite my requests repeatedly.
I understand. Thank you.
Just one note on, if you were to separate the 12 acres, a 2 6-acre lot, plus or minus, they're both of them 100% GPOD area. Now you have 2 lots, and you'd have to have a septic system on those lots, presumably. It doesn't make any sense to separate it. We had to consider the whole site, as a unit for cohesiveness and complete development. So.
Oh, I understand that. I mean, my question is, even with a sewer treatment plant, it still has a leaching field, right? Like, it's just a quantity of, and I'm not sure who that, I'm assuming it's you, right? Like, right, but the more that we add to it, the more that goes into it, the more that needs to be filtered out, which then goes into affecting the quality of the groundwater, which is what the GPOD is supposed to be protecting. So I understand that you're saying the 80,000 square feet per dwelling unit. I understand that you want to throw that out the window. I understand it. But that equates to a number of people that are flushing toilets and running sinks and things like that.
Right, but
So
could I just interject? When you have a single-family home, like the DEP is not overseeing my septic system.
I agree.
It's overseeing the one at the seminary, so there's more protection there than anywhere else in town.
My point is that the engineering bar is set at a different level when you have a central wastewater treatment plant.
You can drink wastewater treatment plant.
You
Water.
can.
I wouldn't.
You can
but,
drink it if you want
scientists
to.
say you can.
I don't want to.
And so, if you have standards like that, the necessity of the GPOD is kind of goes under the table, right? Okay.
Another thing they do at those facilities is they monitor both the upgrading and downgrading well water quality. So you understand there's an impact or not that the system is making to the groundwater. So that's a nice additional
So
protection.
there is a monitoring system.
Yeah, you got to monitor quarterly. You got to report quarterly, both upgrading and downgrading.
Yeah.
Okay, so I hope the public can appreciate the time constraints here. It's almost 9:30. If anyone has any additional comments that have not already been made.
Is there anyone online that wanted to
Anyone
comment?
online, but we've really heard a lot of arguments, and if anybody has any new arguments, I would like to hear them. And if there are none, I think we can move to close the public hearing and move on to the other items on our agenda, so that perhaps the planning board members can get home before 11, 10:30? I don't know. Pat?
The polls are not.
I move that we continue, it's continuing the hearing, is it not?
No, she said close the hearing.
Closing the
We're
public
closing
hearing.
it. All right.
Now, we will be making slight modifications to this in terms of the GPOD, probably something along the lines that I've suggested. I would appreciate, someone who has access to a municipal lawyer that's actually licensed to practice law. I'm retired, I'm no longer a practicing attorney. You could provide us with any information about the GPOD. I note that town council did not flag the statement that we made in this GPOD, about the GPOD in the BHOD. I dropped my pen. Anyway.
Excuse me.
Oh, no, it's okay, I could have gotten it, thank you. So are there any additional comments? So I will entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
I make a motion, we close the public hearing on the Browns Hill Overlay District.
Do I have a
Second?
second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, everyone, for your comments.
I just,
Trying to plan the whole.
That was very well done.
Creating an overlay district for them.
so when do we have to vote on this?
November 18th.
Everybody.
Okay. And that will be after they, oh, yeah.
Going to do with middle campus and the
Well, on the, I think the 17th is the date that the select board has to sign off on the warrant.
for that.
So, based on what they said last night. So do we have to meet and vote
The
on the
select
wording?
board votes its recommendations on the 17th. The Finance and Advisory does it on the 13th, and we do it on the 18th.
The reason, what I'm saying is, I think,
Last date to close the warrant, at least according to this, is November 21st.
okay, I guess 2 weeks before the town meeting is when they have to have the warrant. Last night, they were talking about having to sign the warrant by the 17th, so that it had to be 2 weeks before the December 9th
Well,
meeting.
this is a schedule that
Somebody
Jen
gave you.
Tomalovitz
Okay.
provided us, and so
They were talking about the 17th last night, that's all I'm
that's
telling
when they
you.
vote their recommendations. That's when the select board votes. We vote on the 18th.
Okay,
Yeah, that's more than,
okay, okay. I thought they said they had to sign it by then. Okay,
21st.
great. I just don't want to make, I want to make sure we're. All right,
Okay, so
Now
just
that, now that all the people have gone,
and listening online, yep. What do you have to say, Bill?
I think that the work that has been done on trying to plan the whole hill for its eventual use is, wonderful. But I think this is a 50-50 proposition in getting through the town, because it's just got so many moving parts, and people are going to get apprehensive. And that everybody here this evening said, if we had a one-page overlay district that covered just the lower campus and the water area, okay, that we could write, and we left the existing single-family underlying district for all the remaining parts of the hill, we could fly that through town meeting just like that.
Well, it's not in the seminary's interest to do that. And the reason
Wait
for
a minute,
that,
it's not in what?
the seminary's
Not in the
interest to
town's
do that.
interest.
They, but wait a minute, wait, hold on. Merwin said as much.
Well, see,
But they have said they would be happy with just an overlay district for the
right, and if
apartments.
they did that, then those apartments would have to remain in that existing footprint forever, because they're pre-existing non-conforming uses, and they cannot
No, why
expand
can't we, we could have a little overlay district that covered them and allowed 10% increase.
Curious why you think it's 50/50 after tonight's discussion. It sounds like Marnie's last suggestion about the GPOD, using the characteristics of it but not using it, may satisfy a lot of those abutters. So it sounds, I think we're a lot greater than 50/50 at this point.
I think there are great reasons to do all of this, okay? But I think
Well, the question is, who's going to show up on December 9th? Because it's going to be a butters, and they're going to be educated.
And the,
And
and
the other
they just said, the abutters just said, if you want to carve off the apartments, we think it's a wonderful thing.
I don't think they said
No,
that.
that's what Deb Safford said,
Yeah.
and she's not in a butter.
I think it's an interesting conversation, but
Let's get on with
I
our
do
agenda.
want to.
We can have further discussion on this on the
Gotta go to
18th.
work tomorrow in the morning.
Because I think, what's that?
I just was saying that we should go on to the next item of the agenda. maybe.
We should do what?
I do want to talk about what Bill's talking about, but I also want to go home.
Well, yes, and I think that there are avenues of promoting this overlay district that go beyond what we've talked about. And I've talked to Mark about identifying Pilgrim Hall and the Retreat House as buildings of historic significance and linking that to the Mandel family and trying to tell a story about this seminary that will engage people and also let them know that what this process has yielded. And, you know, the abutters have achieved more than they could ever have hoped for.
I think it's
The abutters have achieved a lot, and Merwin said as much. He said, we gave up the whole, you know, commercial, 166,000 square feet of commercial by
Well, if
right.
you recall, when Rick Mitchell was on the planning board, we had all sorts of commercial uses.
I think if we address the gentleman who had the most concerns, and who has all of the butters show up to his house on Thursday, if we address his concerns with some of the ideas Marnie had and some of the other articulation we put in there, and give it to him, he gives it to his abutter friends, and I think that's probably gonna satisfy your biggest, you know.
I mean, I don't think a lot of people in town are going to show up on December 9th. It's going to be people who are interested, and they're probably going to be more educated than we have on a regular town meeting.
Well,
So it's going to be
actually-
people who are affiliated with the seminary who live in town, and it's going to be abutters. And then, it, you know, I mean, if,
Diehards.
Well,
yeah, I
think
mean,
you do have
and then the people who go to every town meeting.
I think you do have a large segment of town people that are aware of this because they want the revenue, because they also want the low-income housing satisfied as well, right? So you have a
Right, so,
large
but I
segment-
think all those work in favor of passing this. What I'm
Yes.
saying is, how many people are we gonna have that show up that aren't? But if we have the abutters who aren't, that's, you know, I think quorum is 75. So I think, you know, I'm just trying to like, I think we're more than 50%.
Let's brainstorm
Okay,
at our next
let's do it.
meeting.
Okay, thank
Okay?
you.
All right, so
Sorry.
review and vote on the zoning, the memorandum that we have for
The zoning board of appeals?
the
Yeah.
zoning board of appeals. I have reviewed it, Jonathan reviewed it, and
I thought, did you write it? I thought it was very well written.
I did too.
ChatGPT
I
written all
did
over
some
it.
work on it.
I'm just kidding.
Jonathan did some work on it, and Mark did some work on it. I thought it came out very well.
Yes.
So, do we need to discuss it?
Nope.
Any discussion? I'll entertain a motion to approve the memorandum from the Hamilton Planning Board to the Zoning Board of Appeals with respect to the comprehensive permit application of Tobacco Hill Capital Partners LLC.
So moved.
All in favor?
Well, we
Wait
need
a
a second.
second.
Oh, second,
Second.
sorry, I'm in a rush.
Second?
Second, all in favor?
All right.
Okay.
Did they already have their first meeting?
No,
Board of Appeals?
they've moved to continue the one tomorrow, right?
Yep.
Okay, so they're not going to meet probably until December on this?
Yeah, well,
To the new year.
Well, we want this to be pushed as far into the future as possible to allow Greenbelt to try and
Correct.
right.
raise all the money.
right.
Other, yeah, it's a lot of energy.
They're-
Got it.
They're 1.2 million short
Of the
of
3.4?
the 3.7.
Of the 3.7, interesting.
So they still have more to go.
About $1
So
million.
if you're interested
They have
in
about- They're about a 2.5
expanding
out of 3.5.
Tobacco Woods and saving that amazing location, I'm sure Greenbelt would like to
Would
talk
receive,
to you.
receive any donations we want to give. Got it.
So the next item on our agenda is, if I can find
The
it,
planning board schedule?
our planning board schedule.
Greenbelt's had some luck with the Manchester folks. I mean, that's an area that borders
Oh,
Manchester,
yeah.
all
Yeah, that's
lakes
smart.
and,
yeah.
and Essex. They've raised some money there, too.
Oh, good. And they have some corporate
Yep.
sponsors. The schedule, is there a reason for the two drafts?
Yep, so the first one is, this year, we did an extra meeting in January to work on zoning amendments, so the first one has an extra meeting in January if you want to kind of lock that in the schedule. You don't have to do it, but it kind of, we would schedule the room for that day. And it eliminates the second July meeting, so there's only one July meeting to give you a little summer break.
Although it looks like it's on here.
It's still on there for,
It wasn't on the one online, but it's, I see it here.
What do you
Or
think?
did we just get 2 copies of draft 2?
So draft 1 has just one July meeting, and then the second one
Well,
has,
in our packet, there's 2 July meetings, so we must just have copies of the same draft.
there's draft 1 and draft 2, see how they're labeled?
I know, I'm just saying,
Draft
on
2
our
says
draft 1,
July.
it has 2 July meetings. Online, it only had 1. When I looked online, it did not have that
I think you're
July
looking-
6th.
I think you're looking at the application deadline,
Oh, sorry. Yes,
It's,
you're right.
the second column there.
Got it.
Yep.
Ignore me.
Well, I think under the circumstances where we have had extra meetings this year, we will have gone to a December 9th town meeting. I'm thinking that there's little appetite for 3 meetings in January.
Yeah,
Does anyone agree with me?
I agree.
yep.
So I think we should go with draft 2. And depending on what we undertake, there's no law that says we can't cancel one of the July meetings if we're, ahead of the game in terms of our
We
work.
can't make January 5th anyway.
And maybe cancel the December 16th meeting of this year, of 2025. I'm talking about this year, not,
Oh,
because we
yeah.
have that town meeting on the 9th.
And
And we have a planning board meeting on the 2nd. It might be nice to, I'm jumping off of, we'll make that
Why don't we cross that bridge?
bridge next meeting.
Yeah.
I'll put that on my agenda.
December 2nd, yeah. We
Draft,
Or December 2nd, yes.
draft 2, draft 2 has us meeting the Tuesday prior to the Saturday town meeting, and then the Tuesday following the Saturday town meeting. It's like a lot of us in
Yeah.
a short period of time, so it's like the 31st.
Oh, yeah, why
That
do we
Tuesday,
have?
that Saturday, and then the next Tuesday. And I think you're trying to avoid school week vacation, thank you very much, but
Right.
it lines everybody up back to back to back.
Well, do we have to actually, can we think about this?
yeah, we
Talk
can put
about
off.
it at our next meeting?
Well, and the question is, why is it like March 10th, and then we go to March 31st? So that's 3 weeks in between.
That's because there's a book sale in this room. So we're trying to avoid like school vacation weeks and random events in this room.
Okay.
And then they're closing the whole building in, what? That letter from,
Yeah, they're closing this room for January, February, so we're gonna meet in that COA, so.
oh my goodness, when is the town hall going to be done?
It should be
February?
done this spring.
Spring, they said.
Late spring.
Yeah.
Yep,
This
They
spring?
said that last night.
2026, spring. We'll be
Okay,
sitting
so
there.
we will
Pretty
bring
good on
that,
the
I'll make sure this schedule is on our agenda next time.
Okay.
And then the next
I
item
think
is the review and potential vote on the small wireless facility special permit. Has everyone had an opportunity to review that?
Build a roof.
So it's the notice of decision. Mark, I thought this was great. I'm going to give you my copy if you want to look at my, the only real question I have, it's so minor. I mean, I'm going to give you my edits, and if you throw them away, they are so minor that they don't really amount to much of anything. But On page 2, you have one resident, Becky Callio, submitted an email. No other comments were received by the planning board relative to the application. I think you meant written comments, because we had abutters come and speak at the public hearing.
Technically, though, that was the other special permit application for the other location.
location.
Oh,
For the one on the corner, or the one?
No, in front of the
At
neighbors.
the- In front
Yeah,
of the house, and
they moved it,
down the
yeah,
street.
they moved it.
Yeah.
but so am I right, there were no other written comments then? There were no other comments at all?
Correct.
I don't know if
Right,
there are
no
any-
other comments?
Yeah.
Besides
Okay,
that
So
one.
that's correct, all right. So then, I will entertain a motion to approve this notice of decision.
So moved.
Do I have a
Second.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And then we only have one other item on our agenda.
Adjournment?
Yes,
We need to sign this,
motion.
though? Do we need to sign this?
we do.
Yes, it's on that table behind Marnie, if you could
Okay,
just stop
perfect.
on your way out.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.